Remember, remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder, treason, and plot. For I see no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Many other forms of treason that should never be forgotten, ladies and gentlemen, which is why in Britain, in the glorious, multiculturally diverse socialist utopia of Britain, it seems very much like it is an unending nightmare. And we have many of those examples to go through today. I'm your friendly neighbourhood far-right thug lord, George Cresswell, and this is Voice of the Valleys. Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with your host, always satirical unless it's not, your friendly neighbourhood far-right thug, pew, 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 with the facts and the logic, where as best as possible, anyway, for, slightly above intelligence midwit, Mr. George Cresswell, or if you want to be fancy, Lord George Cresswell, Lord of random 10 square feet in Scotland. But anyway, getting straight into today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to everybody that's been liking, sharing, subscribing, all of the stuff. I greatly appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen. Good knowing that there are people out there, like I saw with the group of activists on the A470 semi-recently, there's people out there that really do have an appetite for this stuff, really do support it, really do see what's going on in the UK, in all of the Western world, in America as well, certainly with the election of, the Muslim trans, the kids, abolish the prisons, socialist Mamdani, right? Yeah, have fun, New York. I hope you get exactly what you voted for, especially when you look at the percentage of women in, I believe it's the age bracket of 18 to 29 voted for Mamdani. It is about 80 plus %, ladies and gentlemen, in an already crime-ridden hellscape of a city. In many ways, they just voted to make it so much worse. And I just hope that these people get exactly what they voted for, and that when the inevitable, the tears come of like, I don't feel safe in my city anymore, that maybe you have a little think, and that you have a look at the seeds that you sow that you have to now reap. But the guy who said that he wanted to abolish prisons, but that violence is a social construct, and maybe thinking that voting for that guy was a bad idea. Maybe think that voting for a foreign Muslim socialist was maybe a bad idea. But some people got to find out the hard way. Certainly we had to. In the UK, many people still haven't learned that lesson about the dangers that we face, the genocide by replacement that our politicians are attempting to implement, the enslavement of those who remain, the de facto birth control out of outpacing native Britons on the housing market so that they can't have a family, so that gradually their existence is greater and greater diminished, right? So they can bring in more of their replacements so that the need for immigration can be fueled by the ever-persecuted birth rate of the native Briton, which is then impetus for more immigration and so on, puts more stress on public services, but also completely changes the demographics of the country. And one thing to remember, ladies and gentlemen, as much as you may not want to admit it, demography is destiny. That was another thing that was evident in the New York elections. Not going to dwell too much on that, though. I do want to say before we get started, thank you to everybody that's commenting and liking, and the ratio to it. I'll link the clip down below in particular, is insane. The clip of the English lady who's a Plaid Cymru rep that basically said the Welsh people themselves don't exist, right? And it's akin to genocidal rhetoric because it's being used as impetus to replace the Welsh people in the only land they have to call home, right? It's an impetus to remove them by the process of replacement migration, which is genocide by replacement. That's why it's genocidal rhetoric. But I see very little in terms of separatist outrage with regards to that, ladies and gentlemen, from those who claim to be, tired of the English colonizers but won't say anything about the party, or in fact, in many instances, stands for the party, right, that are championing an English lady, rather. And thanks, Dare We Win from Blaenau Festiniog. Thanks for really letting the side down there, mate. That's a joke, obviously. I hope you guys are happy in and of your marital union. Obviously, I genuinely hope you guys are happy. But now, the Party of Wales are platforming an English lady who says the Welsh don't exist. The Welsh are just a nebulous set of values, and anybody who adheres to those values is all equally Welsh. Yes, an English lady telling the Welsh literally who they are, and in many instances, or rather in that same instance, saying that they do not exist as a people. Still waiting on that separatist outrage, guys. Still waiting on that separatist outrage. So now you're letting your own side down. You're letting your own side down. Surely, if you're tired of the English colonizers, you should be angry about the Party of Wales platforming a said English colonizer who literally says that you guys don't exist. Another thing, ladies and gentlemen, conversation with Joe Marsh coming out very, very soon. A couple of connection issues, which meant that I had to download it all to Premiere Pro so that I could resync it up and make sure it was all crisp and clean and wah. It could also gave me a little bit of extra editing flexibility, which was good as well. So that'll be coming out very, very soon. For members, obviously, in the locals, Patreon, and YouTube sections. Apologies about the local section as well, guys. One thing you could do, I'm not sure if it counts if you don't join the actual members area for the fee, but there is like a unpaid members area that you can join on locals, and I would strongly recommend you do so, purely because on locals you have to hit certain follower targets, I believe it is, certain engagement targets, in order to then unlock additional memory and upload capacity, right? So thing is with locals at the moment, I can only actually upload 5 gigabytes of video every month, right, with the current level of engagement that I have, the basic plan, right, which is very difficult, as you can imagine. Video files themselves often go to gigabytes just if you go over a couple of minutes, depending on your recording settings. So usually what I have to do is I have to upload them to a separate service, and then once I've done the editing and everything in that separate service, when I then export them to different video qualities and stuff like that, it drastically reduces the file size. Still hasn't been enough in some instances, mine, which is why there's a lot less clips on locals, but it's just because there's such a tight memory constraint. I don't particularly like it, but I like having that locals option there as well, because Rumble is picking up in a lot of popularity, particularly in the States at the moment, but I think it will be getting more popular because people see how censorious YouTube is, and other platforms like Odyssey are really still in their infancy at the moment. But I think that's going to be getting a lot bigger going forward. You already have certain big creators from Britain and stuff like that on there, like Russell Brand and others as well. So, yeah, if you want to go over and follow me on locals as well, you find the link down below. You don't have to necessarily subscribe to the paid version, obviously, but you will get exclusive content in there. But I think even if you just build up the follower count on there in the non-paid section, that then factors into your following. And once that gets to a certain point, you'll then be able to upload more content and have more upload capacity, and also be able to upload in higher video qualities as well. So it's a constraint I don't particularly like, but that's the way that locals works, unfortunately. And finally, with that conversation, Joe, I really appreciate everything that you've done for me as well. And I really appreciate that somebody who I won't name here, because I don't know if they'll be comfortable with that, but let's just say that they've given me a reason to think that the future looks a lot brighter than it did up until this point, where I've been a massive burden on people, that if I didn't have a very loving support network that I did, not only would I not be able to do any of this, but I probably would have been out on the street, or potentially with debt collectors at my door. So cannot be appreciative of the opportunity that I have been graced with enough. You know who you are, sir. Thank you so much. Just hope to not let you down. I'll certainly, obviously, apply myself to the best that I can, but thank you ever so much for the opportunity and for giving me this little bit of hope that the future will look that little bit brighter. So thank you ever so much for that. You know who you are. Getting into the topics for today then, ladies and gentlemen. So many things that I want to go through. It's probably going to be quite a long show. It's probably the 3rd or 4th time that I've recorded this now, because obviously with it being 5th of November, we've had a lot of fireworks going off recently, and my dog's been going absolutely crazy. Luckily, she's not doing too bad now. She's passed out on the sofa at the moment, having calmed down, because well, let's just say this tiny little quaint town has turned me into Ebenezer Scrooge for bonfire night overnight, and has made me think, hang on, why are we not making bonfire night about actual bonfires? Why are we making it about colourful flying grenades? The all of a sudden tonight, the neighbours decided that they were going to transport us from a nice little quaint Welsh town in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, right, to Fallujah or to Gaza or to some place in Sudan, Nigeria, all of these other places where there's conflict going on, there's war going on, or wherever, right? Ukraine, pick whatever, location you want. Pick whatever location you want. That's where we got transported, right? All of a sudden, we were in a nice little quaint valleys town. The next thing you know, we're in fucking Baghdad. And they didn't end up finishing until about 9:30 at night, which is very, very late, obviously. But it made it an absolute pain in the arse to record. But luckily, it seems to all be finished now. And hopefully that means we can get through this in relatively good time. I would imagine we're going to probably be at least an hour and a half to 2 hours, so please do stay tuned. But first things first, ladies and gentlemen, some additional information has come out with regards to the Huntingdon stabbing incident involving one Anthony Williams, which was the impetus with the conversation around British-born problems, right? That was the impetus, or the topic of last episode. That was main topic of last episode. So how do we deal with British-born problems? We've seen now, there's so many examples, right, of second, third, fourth generation immigrants to Britain, right, that have made seemingly no effort to integrate, usually certain groups, right, certain groups and certain types of people. Not naming any specifically YouTubes. Don't be trying to pull me for hateful or derogatory content or anything like that now, but we all know what's going on. Right, we all know what's going on. But you have Anthony Williams, who went on to do this heinous stabbing spree that was like what happened to Irina Zarutska, but on steroids, right? And it was only stopped by the heroic actions of what seemed to be two people in particular, although I've seen some others say that others were involved as well, but I can't find any sort of big corroborating reports, but we'll go over all of that in a moment. But again, he was born here, and that's why a lot of people were saying that, it was an English person that done it. Obviously, we know he's not English. We know he's not English. If you take his blood and do his ancestry test, it's not going to point back to England, right? We know that. But again, it's not stopped the libs from trying to say, oh, look, it was a native Brit that was going on to do this heinous crime, and it was a foreign Muslim that stopped him, of all people. But we'll get into all of that in a moment, why the narrative that the libs are trying to spin around it is not what we should be going along with, despite the heroism of that one person in particular. So again, Anthony Williams, you then have Aksaruda Cabana is another easy one to point to. He was quote-unquote born here, right? And they tried to play him off as if he was a Welshman. He's obviously not a Welshman. He's an African, right? Then you had all manner of other examples. You have at least another example that sticks out in my head is the gangs, for example, is that obviously as they're having families of their own that follow in the steps of their, father or brother or whoever it is. It's a family-run business, these trafficking rings, right, a lot of the time. So you have these generations of these immigrants that came up through Britain itself, born in Britain itself, went on to do heinous things. You have Michael Adebolajo that slaughtered Lee Rigby, right, in the middle of the street with a meat cleaver while citing verses of the Quran. All manner of other examples, right, of people being quote-unquote born in this country, British born, then go on to do heinous things, often to British people. Right. Then you have others as well. You likely have one of the things that came up in my conversation with Joe Marsh was these rival gangs of Turkish criminals that were having gang warfare in London that a 9-year-old got caught in a crossfire in. How many of those were born in Britain? Does that make them British? No, of course it doesn't. All manner of others, right? So we need to have a talk, not just about people that are coming over on small boats, not just first-generation migrants and so on. These problems go far back with people having grievances against the British people that go back generations. And as a result, the solutions to these problems are going to need to go back as far as the problems persist. That's a deep conversation that we're going to need to have, right? And some very upsetting policies are going to stem from that. But ultimately, this is what happened when a target has been unfairly put on innocent British people's backs, and they have now been marked for death as an entire civilization, as an entire race, as ethnic groups. They've been marked for elimination or at least subjugation. That brings us to, or back to rather, Huntingdon. As you know, Anthony Williams went into a train, and there's some more information, some very harrowing information that made its way to the forefront with regards to these incidents, ladies and gentlemen. First thing to get through, as we'll get into now, the guy was known to police. He was known to authorities because he had, and people called that they were going to go with this card, a history of mental health problems, right? Like the frigging guy who was arrested 15 times in America, who slaughtered Irina Zarutska, right, in cold blood. There was a history of mental health problems. And as a result, you can't send them to jail, or you can't give them harsh punishment, because it'll be seen either as insensitive, intolerant to their disability or whatever it is, or their mental incapacity. It'll be seen as racist. It'll be seen as all of these other things, right? All these other labels, but just means that criminals stay out on the streets and do heinous things to innocent people, right? Cruelty to the innocent via compassion to the guilty. That's what we're seeing. So the knifeman who stabbed terrified passengers, this is according to the Daily Mail, you find it linked down below, in Huntingdon train rampage, had a history of mental health issues and was known to the authorities. All we learned from this, ladies and gentlemen, is that he said chillingly to one passenger before going on his stabbing spree, in which 11 people were injured, he said, he's alleged to have said, quote, "The devil is not going to win." And you could argue that the devil did not win, thankfully, that day, thanks to the heroic attitudes of what seems to be predominantly two individuals, as we'll get onto a little bit later. After the police tasered him and arrested him, right, the medics rushed 9 seriously injured passengers to the hospital, treated other day's commuters at the scene. Despite the government ruling terrorism out, which, okay, they can do that, I'd still argue that it is a terror incident against the British people, because, you know, you could make the argument, what was this person even doing here, right? Because there's now a failure of the birthright citizenship system, right, which definitely needs to be looked at. Sources confirmed the suspect had a history of mental health issues and was known to authorities. We're clearly seeing here, this was basically another Southport copycat, just with different victims, it seems. You know, this guy just decided to go on a massive stabbing spree despite being known to authorities. A classic case of they knew whatever he was suffering with, whether it's paranoid schizophrenia, whether it's delusions, whatever the hell he was suffering with, authorities knew about it and they let him roam the streets anyway. They let him roam the streets anyway, despite reports of him doing other forms of criminal activity before this incident, ladies and gentlemen. One of which was that he walked into a barber shop brandishing a knife and threatening, patrons there and staff, which some people, not some of the attendees in the barber shop, but some people on X tried to make out that the screenshots from this particular event were doctored, and you'll be able to see now that is not true, ladies and gentlemen. This is the same footage that was shared in the last episode, but it's a much more zoomed out perspective. And you'll be able to see he charges into this his barbershop with this knife, right, brandishes it in front of the patrons and the staff, saying something incomprehensible to them. And by the way, if you go and watch this clip on the references down below, it'll be the second reference, I would imagine, or maybe the third. If you go and watch this clip, if you're using headphones, be warned about the volume. Make sure you have your volume turned down, otherwise you will regret it. I can promise you that. So what happened, ladies and gentlemen, I'll show you this clip in a moment. This was moments after stabbing a 14-year-old boy. This is when he went into the barbershop. He went into a barbershop and was brandishing this knife, which people tried to say that the hands had been switched, it was doctored or whatever. It was completely false. All of these completely false, designed to make it seem as though this guy didn't do exactly what he did, but people knew that he was, people knew what he had done all along. And this was after he stormed into this Peterborough barber shop. Police investigated whether he also stabbed a 14-year-old boy minutes before. So the CCTV footage in this instance showed a man believed to be Williams entering Ritzy Barbers in Fletton, Peterborough, on Friday evening at 7:14 p.m, minutes after police were called to the stabbing of a 14-year-old in the city centre. Barbershop staff then called police around 90 minutes after he left, but Cambridgeshire Constabulary did not send officers, instead asking the shop to upload the CCTV online. That's a common theme, as you'll understand if you go watch my conversation with Joe Marsh, where when it comes out, the police seem to be increasingly lazy when it comes to these things, ladies and gentlemen. But they waited 90 minutes. Why did they wait 90 minutes, you wonder? Because they didn't want to be called racist, maybe, or whatever it is. Who knows? But here is that footage in question, ladies and gentlemen, of him going into the barbershop. You'll be able to see clearly the screenshots that came from this incident are not doctored. He's going in there, he's holding the knife, he's saying something incomprehensible. I should have taken care of the audio, so it should be at least tolerable, ladies and gentlemen. But the audio is not very good as it is. You may just want to double check your headphone settings before we get on. You've got 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Video coming on screen for you now.
I can just clear you out. I'm just I can see you. My life.
So quite clearly, perfectly sane behaviour. Quite clearly, perfectly sane behaviour. Nothing to worry about here. Nothing to see here. Obviously not. Obviously not, ladies and gentlemen. It makes you think, why was this guy out roaming the streets? Why was he not in some kind of mental health facility somewhere where, you know, maybe he had both arms strapped like this and he couldn't exactly do anything until they figured out what the source of his problem was and maybe, you know, treated him, right? That'd be actual compassion for him, right? Actually trying to get to the root of the problem and actually trying to help him to rid him of whatever demons he seems to be dealing with, whatever mental health issues he seems to be dealing with as well. Not letting him out onto the streets where he's going to go terrorize innocent people. But what do I know? I'm just a pseudo pundit. I won't even call myself a pundit, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just somebody that bookmarks these things and thinks he might have something to add to the discourse. At the very least, people deserve to know about this and have a perspective on it. And it's an alternative to obviously the mainstream media, which, as we'll see in a moment, especially the BBC, will not tell you the truth when it suits them politically. But as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, not the first time he was known, because there was a call put in about this gentleman. There was a call put in about this guy, a neighbour of the Huntingdon attacker by the name of Jan Krozhenko, I hope I'm saying that right, put in a call to police about a, quote, very, very aggressive man leaping out from the pavement who began kicking his car in the early hours of October 25th. Now, there's no actual video of this as far as I'm aware, ladies and gentlemen, but there is CCTV footage of somebody who appears to be, or at least looking very similar to, what's his name, Williams, walking down the street, the same street on this little housing estate, it seems to be, that Jan was living on. And he's alleged to have been kicking his car in the early hours of October 25th. It was the Saturday before Anthony Williams, accused of boarding an LNER train at Peterborough station on November 1st and stabbing passengers with a knife. It was a couple of, Saturday before he was alleged to have done that. Police are already facing questions about why the train attack was not thwarted after Williams was linked to 2 stabbings and an incident where he allegedly brandished a knife in a barbershop 24 hours before the rampage. We literally just saw that video. But here is that video in question for you, ladies and gentlemen, coming up on screen for you now. I'll just play it in this little box for you, so you'll see here now. This is the video of the ambusher. It's called neighbour of the Huntingdon attacker. Kicked minutes before. Footage shows a man dressed in black hooded clothing walking up the residential road in the middle of the night. The Daily Mail does its subtitles really stupid for some reason. The guy is seen tentatively driving up the road with his blinkers on. I love the term blinkers. In an attempt to see the property the man then entered. The incident had taken place on October 25th, a week before the Huntingdon, I was going to say, obviously, attempted massacre, attack. He says police were called, but nobody investigated, which is a common theme Not only, ladies and gentlemen, because it's now alleged that police get so many of these incidents that they can't respond to them all. And obviously, what's the solution? Well, if it was the Mamdani solution, it would be even less funding. But, it's just a case of now not willing to acknowledge the problem, it seems, for whatever reason, for whatever label you want to use, for whatever politically correct term you want to use to try and obfuscate away from it. We've now got, when we never had it before, so many of these incidents, the police cannot respond to them all. But not only that, they outright don't, because in many instances, it seems the police are just, unless they're chasing a thought criminal, unless they're chasing somebody for things that they said on social media, they seem to be quite laissez-faire about it, right? Because of how politicized that they become. I kind of lost my train of thought there for a moment. But yeah, unless it's going to be that kind of, politicized crime, they don't really care. I had that, for example, where I didn't have any police come out one time when my car was hit in the middle of the night by what I will believe. This is not proven by any means. I don't want to say that this person actually was, but based on the footage that I have, I believe that the person driving at this time was under the influence of something, right? Or they were that tired that they just, had one of those temporary, falling asleep at the wheel, where you just fall asleep for a couple of seconds, those little micro sleeps, right? When you're chronically sleep deprived. And basically the way that it worked, my car was parked outside of my mum and dad's garage at the time. It's tucked into the side of the road, so only a little bit is poking out into the road on the driver's side. And the way that it works, the back street that it was on, you have to pull over to the opposite side of the road to avoid parked cars on the other side. And this person came through barreling way too fast for the speed of the road, hazards on the lot, and has a good few meters to correct and pull themselves back over to the other side of the road, the correct side of the road, before hitting my car, which would be on the opposite side of the road to the side they should be driving on when they hit it. But they never did, and they just crashed straight into my car and then grinded all up the side of it. There's some quite gnarly photos. I'm going to see if I can find them and flash them up on the screen of what happened. My wheel was jutted out that way, and all the, part of the suspension was damaged. It was obviously completely undrivable, right? But then they just, we had CCTV. They drove off. Somebody did accost them, by the way. Somebody happened to be sat out on the wall nearby and happened to see pretty much the whole thing. Came in and told us. But yeah, we put in the call. Went to find the car. Then we actually found the car that did it. And later, then obviously traced back to who it was to. But yeah, you put in a call, you don't get any calls out, anything like that anymore. Especially this was, late at night. Early hours in the morning, so not exactly expecting rapid response to come out at that time, but is indicative of many instances, not only how stretched the police are, but many instances possibly, unless it's the right type of crime, how little they care. Now, this is the bit to get onto now, ladies and gentlemen. Important thing with regards to this is, as I mentioned, there was some heroism that was on display. There was some heroism that was on display in this incident, which is important to draw attention to. Now, I don't believe that it supports the narrative that the libs would have you believe. Many people in the aftermath of the Huntingdon attack were quick to sing the praises of one Samir Zutini. Samir Zutini, he's a 48-year-old LNER customer experience host. He was a rail worker over 20 years on the line. And he, I believe, was at least the first, or one of the first, to notice and throw himself between the attacker and the passengers, blocking Williams from stabbing a girl and allowing others to seek safety. And he ended up sustaining serious wounds to his head and his neck, and he remains in a critical but stable condition in hospital. No doubt a heroic action, right? Reason why people are latching onto this so much is because the narrative they tried to run with was that this was a native British person going on a terror attack spree, which it wasn't. There was obviously many things that were said about this incident at the time. There was apparently shouts of Allahu Akbar, which have now been seemingly disproven, right? So people claim to have heard at the time, but it does seem now that it wasn't actually true. But they're quick to jump on this because this guy, Samir Zoutini, is an Algerian Muslim, and it plays very well into their narrative that they want to push. And that's why you're seeing many people now calling for Samir Zoutini to be knighted, right? At least in place of Sadiq Khan, right? Which I can at least understand that sentiment, because one of the biggest mistakes we've ever made was knighting Sadiq Khan. Yeah, let's give this guy a knighthood for destroying Britain's capital city. But obviously, this was a tremendously heroic act, and he should be applauded for it. Absolutely, he put himself at grave danger. He could have very easily lost his life. Even, he's in critical condition. It's a good thing that he's stable, because, it might have been a case he got to hospital. They tried to do everything they could, and he was still lost, So very thankful, and very good that he made it away with his life. He would have, left a heartbroken family behind. And it's no doubt heroic. No matter who does it, it's no doubt heroic. Absolutely. Reason this has been getting so much scrutiny and why there is so much stuff to do with this, ladies and gentlemen, that many people don't like is the narrative that's tried to be spun from it. And many people have tried to spin the thank God for immigrants narrative from it, which I think, fair to say, is a little bit of a reach, to say the least. Because this is one guy, one admittedly heroic guy from this point of the world, from this part of the world. But what they've done to push this narrative, ladies and gentlemen, many of them have completely neglected another person that was involved in this incident that also suffered serious injuries and could have lost his life as well. A man in this instance by the name of Stephen Crean. Stephen Crean, a 61-year-old passenger and Nottingham Forest supporter returning from a match, confronted Williams directly despite being unarmed. He attempted to punch the attacker and restrain his knife-wielding arm to protect others, sustaining 6 stab wounds in the process before locking himself in the train bathroom until help arrived. One of the most despicable things I've ever seen with regards to this, ladies and gentlemen, is from a gentleman known as Terry Christian. I'm sure you would have seen this. It even made news headlines. That's how much pushback this guy got. So in the wake of this, ladies and gentlemen, he's basically been doing fellatio on, Samir Zoutini, right? Even saying so as having seen and heard about, or having heard about Samir Zoutini's, heroic display, and having grown up Catholic, and what's the term that they use to describe it when they become an apostate from Christianity, but they see it as freeing themselves. You know what I mean. Essentially, being the equivalent of born again atheist or whatever. I'll have to see if I can find the post, but he went on a deranged attack at Stephen, essentially calling him a coward and saying that he hid in the bathroom throughout the entire attack. And he doubled down on this, despite people saying, take this down, you've got it wrong, this is absolutely abhorrent. And one thing he said in his status about Samir Zoutini is that having, survived, Catholicism or whatever, and managed to survive and make my way through that, really speaking like a really arrogant, uppity, prideful atheist, right? And said, having seen this, I now feel myself drawn towards Mecca. I'd say you should change your surname. You should change the surname to Terry Mohammedan or Terry Moslem or something like that, and move to Mecca if that's how he feels. In fact, many of us would support that, because is he really adding anything to British society? I don't think so. But absolutely then pour scorn on Stephen because you are so ideologically, bent on your narrative and how much you hate the native British people is absolutely disgusting. And that's what you're seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, is commentators on the left, commentators on the right not being the same. I'm very, at this point in time, anti-immigrant in terms of the immigration policies that the government are trying to implement. Can't see it as anything less than an attempt at ethnic cleansing and genocide by replacement of the native British people, all of them in their distinct peoples, right? No, nationalists will, divide themselves along their own little ethnic lines, even within Britain, right? But I'm just using the British people as a catch-all term. It's a lot easier because it's a problem that affects us all. Even then, this one incident, I'll say that this guy is a hero. Actually, even being as anti-Islam, right, as I am. I'll say that because any person can do a heroic act, right? And it does seem in this instance, the people on the train were lucky that they got one of the good ones. I say that very specifically, ladies and gentlemen, because the left will hate it when you do this, when it conflates against their point, when it goes against what they want you to believe. I want to show you this graph. In fact, let me bring it up on this, because I in no way mean insult to Samir Zutini when I say this, not to him in particular, but to then go on this thank God for immigrants narrative, whatever, and to say that every person that comes from the same area of the world that he does is exactly the same as him. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It is completely untrue. And in fact, if you take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen, from Restore Britain, citing the Centre for Migration Control, per 10,000 people, in terms of who is charged and where they come from with sexual offences in London, you will see, if you look on screen, Algeria is a solid third. So for Afghanistan, which is at the top, you have 74.17 per 10,000. Next down from that is Eritrea. Eritrea is on there in second place, 65.71. And then Algeria comes in at third at 56.63 charges per 10,000 people. For reference, ladies and gentlemen, British is 6.5 per 10,000 people. That's right at the bottom of the graph. In fact, yeah, you can just about see it at the bottom with the border. So to say then we should be going on this thank God for narrative, thank God for Algerians, let's all be drawn to Mecca over this guy, is absolutely ridiculous. And sadly, many people have done so. Many people have done so at the expense of talking about the native hero that also gave his life for to stop Anthony Williams from going on his rampage. Obviously, you've seen all the mainstream media outlets plaster this guy's face, plaster Zutini's face all across their newspapers, right? I haven't seen anywhere near as much, at least on X, aside from certain political commentators on the right, for example, anything about Stephen Crean, for example. And as you can see here, maybe Terry Christian, you might want to show him this image, ladies and gentlemen, of Stephen Crean as he is in his home with his hand bandaged up. As I mentioned, he also suffered wounds to the head, but I believe they might be slightly hidden by his hair. It does look like he has a slight bit of dried blood on his head or whatever. I'll just pull up this article. Actually, the actual image is not coming up in the separate tab. So this is an article from the Sports Grail, of all places, one of the places I could find it. Who is Stephen Crean, the man who stopped Anthony Williams in Huntingdon train stabbing incident? You can clearly see here, he was not just hiding in the toilet, ladies and gentlemen, as Terry Christian tried to claim. He did indeed put his life on the line, much as Samir did. And they're both heroes, but you can see the change then came, or the response came. A lot of the left did not want to cover this guy. A lot of the left did not want to say anything about him when there were some, for example, here, look, and you can see here that he's got his hand bandaged up. There's a lot of bandages around there. He came at a knife attacker, unarmed. But he's probably untrained. He's not exactly going to be like a military operative who would have been, trained in close quarters combat, maybe had a bit more experience dealing with weapons. We don't know. He's just a Nottingham Forest supporter coming back from a football game. And next, he's putting himself in between the general public and a knife-wielding madman as a 61 years old. 61 years old. The left did not want to say anything about this guy. They did not say, thank God for good native British men or good native British man, Stephen Crean, that also intervened to stop this knife-wielding marauder, which if you remember, ladies and gentlemen, was called a marauding terror attack, or at least a marauding attack classification. Both of them deserve to be commended. Absolutely. But to say then that this is impetus for a thank God for immigrants narrative is absolutely out of the, out of the ballpark of any kind of applicability and any kind of reality. It doesn't change the reality of how, again, immigration and certain crime stats, immigration and, sexual assault stats, for example, play out. It doesn't change that whatsoever. And as a result, it shouldn't change the general conversation around, mass deportations, remigration, all of this stuff. Shouldn't change the general conversation about it whatsoever. Don't let the left talk you into it by guilt tripping you into it, saying, look how good this guy done, and nobody else did. Don't let them trip you into it. Don't fall for this trap. Not taking anything away from Samir there, though. Not taking anything away from there. I hope that I would have had the same courage in that situation. And again, why we should be concerned, ladies and gentlemen, is kind of interesting. We're not even a day or two later. So a lot of the incidents from this, the information breaking on who these people were. So the incident happened on November 1st, right? And then information about who got involved, who intervened, came out about a day or two later. It was only then a day or two after that, on today at 5 p.m., that this information came out that, as we'll see, is part of a wider trend of it seems to be the prison service releasing prisoners on purpose. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I was just seeing what the temperature was like on my burner over there. That's meaning we were able to keep the heating off, but also keep the house warm. An Algerian prisoner, I believe, is a visa overstayer, if I'm not mistaken. Was also here on other crimes as well, although I could be mistaken on that one. Was accidentally released from Wandsworth Prison, and this is mad. There's been about three, I think a total of three. So you had Hadush Kabatu, you had another guy, this guy, and you had another person as well, was mistakenly, quote unquote, released. Many people now doubting whether it was actually mistaken. A lot of people now, saying that this might be used as an impetus to try and drive up digital ID, right, seem to be getting a lot more credibility with their argument now. Here's an example. We're getting to this now. This is part of a much wider trend, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll break down some more of these now, because this is a serious problem. This is obviously a massive threat to your community, especially if you live in this area, because, again, it seems to be a lot more than just mere mistakes.
Welcome back, 440. Well, on a day of astonishing breaking news, we've got some more for you. Let's get straight back now to HMP Wandsworth and speak with GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie Peters, you got some big news for us. Tell us more.
Yeah, that's right, Martin. Brahim Kadur Sharif, the Algerian sex offender prisoner accidentally released from this prison, HMP Wandsworth, last week, was a visa overstayer. This is just coming to us now. We've been told by senior sources that the Algerian sex offender prisoner accidentally released from this Category B prison last week was a visa overstayer. Now, we understand that Karim Sharif Badur entered the country legally on a visit visa in 2019, but then overstayed their visa. An automatic overstayer case was then created in 2020, and we're also being told by government sources that he was in the initial stages of the deportation process. But of course, Martin, as it stands, he is a foreign national offender on the loose at large, facing a Metropolitan Police manhunt after he was released accidentally from this prison last week. Now, under the...
Very interesting. Very interesting. He's mentioned there, I believe he not only said he was a visa overstayer, but he was a sex criminal as well. I wonder where we may have just seen that a couple of minutes ago. It's very, very concerning, ladies and gentlemen. And again, it's kind of fitting the way things work sometimes. You had Mamdani in New York being elected. I believe it was the same day that Dick Cheney died, right? So Dick Cheney passed away recently. And it seems that Mamdani was elected on the same day, which is kind of like a weird kind of poetic thing, right? As now you have an example of heroism of a Algerian Muslim man, and then the next thing you know, the British state have quote-unquote accidentally released an Algerian sex offender. Kind of weird how the universe works sometimes, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Kind of weird how the universe works sometimes. But there's the thing that's coming out with HMP Wandsworth at the moment. So Sky News reporter Tom Parmenter has reported that there's a Wandsworth manhunt, searches on for 2 prisoners freed by mistake. Comes after days after, which, by the way, this guy, why the hell were we giving a mainstream media interview to Hadushka Batu in which he expressed no remorse whatsoever? Right, why the hell were we sitting down interviewing this guy? It seems like the guy that the senator, the US senator that went out to interview the MS-13 gang member and be like, we're going to do everything we can to get you back and whatever else, right? Trying to simp for this MS-13 gang member. After the migrant sex offender Hadushka Batu was released in error, statistics show 262 prisoners were freed by mistake in the year leading up to March 2025. That's absolutely terrifying. Just hours after it was discovered a prisoner was on the run after being mistakenly released from HMP Wandsworth. In fact, I'll bring this article up on screen for you so we can read it together, ladies and gentlemen, so you can read it if it's up on screen as well. Bear with me. I can't move this over. Okay, there we go. We'll zoom back out. Just hours after it was discovered a prisoner was on the run after being mistakenly released from HMP Wandsworth, the prison admits it has a second escapee or just a person that was released. HMP Wandsworth in South London admitted a foreign prisoner was accidentally released on October the 29th, just 5 days after the high-profile release of migrant sex offender Hadushka Batu from HMP Chelmsford in Essex. Surrey Police has also announced it has also been searching for 35-year-old William Smith, who has apparently been released on Monday in a second error by staff at the jail. Both mistakes follow vows by Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary David Lammy that enhanced checks on prisoner releases would be introduced. He literally said that in the Commons today, I believe it was, or in Parliament today, and he made a very hasty exit when his feet were being held to the fire on this. And literally, it seems that all he has in response to this is to say, I'm the first black man to answer Prime Minister's questions, and grow up, man. Seems to be that's all he has to say about it. The number of these types of errors has risen recently, with 262 instances between March 24 and 25, i.e. 2024 and 2025, and a 128% increase on 115 in the previous 12 months. This is obviously not good. So this is the guy that was literally just the guy that we were talking about, ladies and gentlemen. This guy, this guy here, and that guy is the other one that was released as well. So here you go. This guy is the guy that was released, right? The visa overstayer, Brahim Kadur Sharif, right, the Algerian man that was released in error. He is a registered sex offender who was serving time for trespass with an intent to steal, not an asylum seeker. And you also have this guy, William Smith, right? He was sentenced to 45 months for multiple fraud. So we have a serious problem, ladies and gentlemen. The question remains as to whether this is being done intentionally, right? Or if this is truly incompetence. I don't know which is worse. I never think about which is worse because neither are good and neither are justifiable, obviously. Maybe this is a consequence of DEI and all of the things and ideological indoctrination. Who knows? DEI is obviously hiring on anything but merit, and as a result, then you end up directly not picking the best person for the job because you have to take in other factors other than merit beforehand in order to make your pick align with certain diversity quotas and whatever else. And if you put these arbitrary quotas in, whether it's on race, whether it's on whatever else, right, then you're obviously not going to get the best person. Now, again, instantly saying that might make you think, well, how can you, advocate for remigration if it might get, you're kind of advocating based on race then? Well, I suppose in that instance, ladies and gentlemen, you have to go with the fact that we were doing perfectly okay on our own. We started the Industrial Revolution without diversity quotas, right? Without DEI and without any kind of race-based hiring. It wasn't necessary because, you know, we were all just our own people, and it would be the person who was the best fit for the job would get the promotion or get the job, whatever it is, out of his fellow people within his community or whatever. There wouldn't be this weird kind of mass immigration and takeover, and now there's these weird constraints put in where you need to factor race into everything and all of these other things. Fact of the matter is, you know, we were doing perfectly fine. We were leading the world as Britain now, as the, you know, the, in many ways, the Kickstarter of the Western world, if you will, with the Industrial Revolution and all manner of different things, right? We were doing perfectly fine. Seems that, you know, the diversity stuff, the multiculturalism stuff, these weird arbitrary quotas and all this stuff we seem to have it down okay anyway. Seems that, maybe it was deliberately designed to make things worse. Maybe it was deliberately designed to cause the collapse of British and Western civilization. Who knew? But then, ladies and gentlemen, you have to wonder, is this on purpose? In which case it's being done with the goal of furthering a different political agenda, which the only one it would make sense, at least as far as I can see, is to push digital ID. Because obviously you have this thing now where, hang on, and in fact, the two are kind of interlinked, because if you have the people in a position where they shouldn't be working in that position because they're not either equipped for the job or they're not the best person for the job or they're ideologically bent or whatever, then these people end up getting released on accident, for example, or due to sheer incompetence. But then it also provides the impetus to implement the deliberate solution, which would be like, imagine how easy these people would be to get if we had digital ID. Imagine how easy these people would be to get if we had this digital ID, social credit, China-style system, which obviously, ladies and gentlemen, we won't abuse in any way. It'll be strictly used to catch stowaways. And yes, said every crooked politician ever. So yeah, it's a question of if it is incompetence, if it is malice to further a political agenda, or if it is both, if it's a form of opportunism, if it's the fact that now we've spent, decades via diversity and multiculturalism and all of these weird quotas and stuff, pushing people that shouldn't be into these roles where these mishaps happen, that politicians thinking a couple of steps ahead, thinking that, when these mishaps happen, we can use it to further digital ID. We'll soon see if that conversation comes out. I might be wrong. Who knows? But we will see. We will see, won't we, ladies and gentlemen? But it's either incompetence, malice, or both. One thing that certainly is a mix of incompetence and malice, ladies and gentlemen, though, is the fact that this is causing a lot of problems, and not to mention the outside threats as well. And we've got a good few of them to go over now. So tragically, in France recently, as we'll go through this in a moment, one instance which I want to go through in France first. Remix News reported on this. A Chechen migrant, makes you think, what is a Chechen migrant doing in France? Stabbed his ex-wife to death in France on the 4th of November. This was yesterday. Right on the streets of Nice in broad daylight whilst she was holding their 2-year-old daughter. I think there's many people of our people that would think to do something so heinous. There would be a few, obviously. Don't get me wrong. What was a Chechen migrant and his family doing in France? The little girl watched her mother die. He then nearly killed his 17-year-old daughter when she intervened to protect her mother. She remains in hospital with life-threatening injuries, but he was already on trial 3 times for domestic violence. All ended in acquittal somehow. The area which the murder took place is the Moulins, which features an extremely high population of immigrants, including a large Chechen community that is reportedly in quote-unquote shock. I'm not too sure about that, ladies and gentlemen, because there's a short that keeps coming up on my feed every now and again. It's from the Sean Ryan show, and I can't remember. It's the guy that is the SEAL Team 6 operator that I believe it is the guy that pulled the trigger on Bin Laden, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember his name. His name escapes me. He's been on Patrick Bet-David. He's been on loads of platforms. But he has a really thing story in the shorts that come up and in the clips that come up on my feed all the time about a Chechen. He does this really thing story about a Chechen and how they when they were fighting them, I should say, that you could tell who they are because it was obviously a white Muslim. You could tell them they're quite different in terms of their ethnic makeup, and in terms of the way that they are. The way that they shout, they sound quite different or whatever. It's audible that you can tell it's a Chechen. And he says they're the kind of people that if you get overrun, you save a bullet for yourself, because otherwise they're going to basically tear you limb from limb. They kind of enjoy that brutality. And that kind of comes across when you see that he seemingly had no problem offing his ex-wife in front of their 2-year-old daughter. Whilst she was holding her. It makes you think, do we want anything to do with people from this area of the world? At what point do you have to look at the collective, not in the way you'd look at any kind of barbaric collective punishment, which is, for example, what people argue was going on in Gaza with innocent Gazans getting caught in so much of the shelling and everything like that at the moment. But at what point, for example, do you look at like the Gazan population or the Chechen, all these populations where you hear these stories and think, maybe it's just better if we don't have them around? Not kill them, slaughter them en masse, nothing like that. But at what point then do you think, maybe it's just better if we, you go that way, we go this way, and just, pleasantries every now and then or whatever, respect the authority of the other in their quote-unquote territory. At what point do you look at this and just see that you have to stop giving the benefit of the doubt? Because I see that a lot with what seems to be, at least with regards to this, the Muslim population in particular, where now you have to be extremely skeptical. We've seen how there's been quite a few examples circulating now of young British men who are converting to Islam. A lot of them seem to be ginger for some reason, these converts, which is, slightly odd. I suppose they needed something to fill the void, right? But a lot of them seem to be, red in the head. And then that red in the head translates to terror attacks against their own people. Been a few examples of that now. They're called Anglo-Jihadis, they're calling them. At what point we have to look at not just a collective in this instance, but a religion, and say, do we want anything to do with this? Are we gaining anything from this? At this point, given everything that we've seen, given what we know now, given that there's so much information out there dispelling a lot of the myths that they were peddling, right? I would argue not. And this transpired recently that in France, I believe this is like a holiday destination of, I don't know how to say it, Île d'Oléron. I'm not sure how to say it. It's a French island of Île d'Oléron. I hope I'm saying that right. They have now had a suspect in his 30s shouting Allahu Akbar as he was detained, as two people are put in intensive care following a driver seemingly intentionally ploughing down several people on this French holiday destination island. Seemingly similar stuff to what we saw, I believe it was on London Bridge, right? One of the bridges in London where I believe it was a car or a van mounted the curb and tried to take out as many people as they could. They seem to have another example on example on example on example of this stuff happening. At what point do we say that we just can't take the risk anymore?
Breaking developments to bring you regarding a situation in France. This is the island of Oloron, just south of La Rochelle. It's a tourist island, and we're hearing that a driver rammed a vehicle into pedestrians and cyclists, leaving 2 people in intensive care, according to the Interior Minister. The driver arrested by police, according to the Interior Minister. Around 9 people are thought to have been injured. That's according to the mayor of Oloron, talking to BFM TV. And in those comments to BFM TV, the suspect is said to be about 30 years old, and it's reported that the suspect shouted Allah Akbar when arrested. Le Parisien newspaper reported the same details, adding that investigators were looking into the possibility of possible mental disturbances regarding the suspect. We understand from French media that France's anti-terrorism prosecutor's office isn't in charge of the inquiry at this stage, but they have...
Yeah, it said something about ongoing mental issues or whatever. Could we just argue that that is Islam at this point? I know you're not supposed to say that, but that's why it would go back to the root. You don't see Jews plowing into crowds of people shouting Allahu Akbar. You don't see Christians plowing into crowds of people shouting Allahu Akbar. You don't see Zoroastrians doing it. You don't see Yazidis doing it. You don't see, all manner of other people doing it. You don't see Sikhs doing it. You don't see Hindus doing it. They don't see Hindus charging into groups with, although there seem to be a bunch of demon worshippers and stuff like that. You don't see them charging in with their chakrams, is that what they're called, the circular disc things that they've got, and mowing down a bunch of people while saying for Ganesh or whatever. It's a distinct group of people seemingly do this every single time. Now, see, there might be more to come out of this. It might be false. Who knows? We'll see. It's a pattern, though, ladies and gentlemen. Circle, circle, square. Circle, circle, square. It's a pattern. What are we supposed to do? Clearly, the biggest thing is, tolerance, diversity, all of this stuff hasn't served us. And then you think, maybe that's why our ancestors, European ancestors for these people and so on, were so hardline, were so resistant to Islam and literally fought crusades, fought preventative wars, right? The stand at Vienna and so on. They might have that I think I might have the place slightly wrong. All of these battles that we've had to keep this ideology out of our lands, and then we just bring it in en masse thinking that it's changed. Thinking that it's going to be any different. It's literally, the definition of insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, as the saying goes. But now we Islam kept coming back to Europe. There was unspeakable atrocity that spawned the Crusades and so on. And then we just opened our doors to it and thought that it was going to be different. What the hell were we thinking? And now we're getting to this now where incidents like this are happening so often. So often. And you look back through history as well. World Trade Center bombing. 9/11, obviously there was potentially information being withheld by other foreign governments and stuff like that, right? But ultimately, the motivation for the attacks, right? Lee Rigby, 7/7, Manchester Arena, and a bunch of them went and ploughed down a bunch of people on a bridge in Manchester. I believe there was a pregnant woman that was attacked at knife point as well. I believe they're trying to, kill her, stab her in the belly. I can't remember the exact case. I might have that slightly wrong. And now this case in Doloron or whatever it is. Not to mention the amount of anti-Christian attacks commonly perpetuated by these people. I think in the last couple of years, Mark Horton, I believe, did a Freedom of Information Act request recently, revealing that there have been thousands of anti-Christian attacks on churches. But you don't see the same in the other direction. What are we supposed to do? At what point do we look at this and think, maybe we're going to have to, treat this at the ideological source, not just with these fringe cases, because these things don't seem to be letting up. They seem to be getting worse and worse and worse. And the rest of the world is laughing at us or is, holding pity on us. Another terror attack was foiled recently in Glasgow. Terrorist has just been jailed. His name is Shazad Khan, who's hoarding gunpowder, ball bearings, and metal pipes. Right? Attempting to do some kind of mass casualty incident by the looks. He's been given 30 years, ladies and gentlemen. That's all he got. Seemingly was 30 years. 3 years, not 30 years, not 30 years, 3 years. According to this post, he got 3 years, not 30 years. Let me correct this record right now. He didn't get 30 years, seemingly. I suppose we'll see now when I play the clip. I haven't seen it yet. He got 3 years. What kind of deterrent is that?
Shazad Khan sparked a large-scale emergency service response when police discovered gunpowder, ball bearings and metal pipes within his family home in Glasgow's West End. Police had first been alerted to Khan after intercepting a package which was found to contain illegal cattle prods. A raid then found explosive materials which experts say could have been used to make improvised explosive devices. Today at the High Court in Glasgow, Khan admitted to the charges. His defence argued that there had been break-ins in his basement and that he had thought of how best to keep his property secure. Jailing Khan for 3 years and 11 months, Lord Scott said, "It is frankly baffling that you thought that this was an acceptable response," adding, "It is just as well for you that the authorities intercepted these deliveries before you attempted to set the booby traps. Had you done so, there is every possibility that you would have killed or maimed yourself, a member of your family, or some entirely innocent member of the public." Searches of Khan.
Another key example of not only the problem, but also the justice system not doing what it's supposed to. You have a terrorist on your hands, right? And you give him 4 years. It was closer to 4 years than 3 in the end. What kind of deterrent is that? Especially when you look at Labour's early release scheme and you just think, who won't they let out at this point? There's heavy speculation at this point, and it looks to be true. I've yet to see anything directly corroborating that it is true, but there's a good chance that it is, based on where the evidence is pointing, that the person who killed Wayne Broadhurst, I believe his name is Safi Dawood, 22-year-old Afghan, that butchered Wayne Broadhurst in the street as he was walking his dog, was somebody now who could not be named when somebody was recently arrested after being released under Labour's early release scheme, which, by the way, never applied to thought criminals, never applied to people who put things on social media. Now, Lucy Connolly didn't get that treatment. No, Wayne O'Rourke didn't get that treatment. Tommy Robinson didn't get that treatment for showing his documentary. Peter Lynch didn't get that treatment. But potentially, they let out somebody who was already in prison for knife crime out onto the street on the early release scheme, which was put in place by a foreign Muslim female. Right? The foreign Muslim more important than the female part. That later then went on, potentially then later went on to kill one of ours. A council binman who was walking his dog. Could there be a greater betrayal than that for Wayne Broadhurst? Could there be actually a greater betrayal? Think of anything in his family, everything we're seeing right now is demonic, satanic. You see evil runs the world. I think that's why you see so many people coming back, maybe aside from Terry Moslem, right? Coming back to some kind of faith and thinking, holy shit, there's so much evil in the world running the world right now. that there must be, if there's such evil, there must be such good, at least in proportion to it, then I guess people asking really fundamental questions. Does seem, had we had a justice system fit for purpose, that Wayne Broadhurst would still be here today, because that Afghan would not have been on the street that day had justice been done. But yet the Afghan's still here. Shabana Mahmood, Keir Starmer, all of these other disgusting traitors are still here. But Wayne Broadhurst is not. There's no words to describe the treachery, is there, ladies and gentlemen? Have a think about this example as well, ladies and gentlemen, when you think about, again, should we just look at some people, in the world and maybe think, do we want anything to do with them? Maybe we can have a look at the dookie dunking, Indians, for example. I don't say that with any kind of intolerance or whatever. They have their festivals, but maybe we don't exactly have a lot to learn and have a lot to gain by integrating with those whose summation of their sacred religious festival is literally, having a poo fight. It's literally having a poo fight. Because an Indian man recently was on a British Airways flight. He has now been jailed. He's 34 years old for repeatedly groping a 12-year-old girl to, quote-unquote, test the waters, as GB News reports. Name is Javed Inamdar. He had apparently, I'm going to bring this up on screen for you, ladies and gentlemen, because you need to read it for yourself. There's actually, I put out a meme on X recently of seeing the news of the last couple of days, or seeing the news of like just today, that day when I posted it. I think it was today. And it's the meme of the screaming marmot. I'll bring it up on screen for you now. If you haven't, you would have seen it. But reading the news today has been like that screaming marmot, right? Indian man, Javed Inamdar, alleged, get ready for this, ladies and gentlemen, that he had mistaken the girl for his wife when he assaulted the girl on the flight from Mumbai to London Heathrow on December 14th last year. Why are we only learning about this now? I get it. It's prejudice and trials or whatever the hell excuse they use and whatever else. Inamdar also claimed he was actually asleep when he grew up a child. Oh yeah, when you just casually, you're in the middle of your sleep, you're out, you're dreaming or whatever, and you just casually assault a child. I mean, Javed is like, oh yeah, we've all done that, right? Funnily enough, no, we all haven't. No, we all haven't. We don't just, casually be groping children in our sleep. The young girl woke up around midnight screaming, "Get the fuck away from me." It sounded like he was sleeping. Before immediately alerting cabin crew, the 34-year-old told a flight attendant he may have confused the young girl with his wife. So he's either saying that this is a particularly mature-looking 12-year-old, or maybe that says a lot about his wife, doesn't it? Some people, it seems, their, depravity and shamelessness just knows no bounds, some of it. But are we really going to buy this? Are we really going to buy this, ladies and gentlemen? Let's have a look a minute. Let's have a look where they are. Here we go. Referring back to this graph, ladies and gentlemen, it's not actually as bad as I thought, in terms of I thought these people would be placed higher. Maybe that's my own prejudice showing. But again, it's possibly not exactly surprising when you look at India's placement on the list that I showed you before, which in this instance is 11.5, which is just below half. It's down here. If I zoom in just a little bit, there it is. So you can see it there. Just below Nigeria and, well, what used to be Rhodesia. I'm not going to, it'll always be Rhodesia. It'll always be Rhodesia. You're sleeping and you just casually fondle a 12-year-old. Yeah, me neither. Me neither. This is the guy, by the way. Just so you can make sure again. This is imagine you're asleep, you're a 12-year-old girl, and you wake up and this is, groping you. Just, oh. Waking up as a 12-year-old being groped is, awful. Absolutely awful. Just, there's no words to describe how awful it is. Ugh. No matter who's doing it. But again, maybe there's just certain people we'd just be better off not having around us, not having in our communities. Another one, ladies and gentlemen, we've got more context for you on the assault that happened in Cardiff recently, which I reported on before. There's why, ladies and gentlemen, you're seeing how many examples that have come out literally just again in the last couple of days, right? Just again in the last couple of days. Why, again, I'm reacting to this like a screaming marmot. This is CCTV footage, very brief CCTV footage, showing, I'm going to play it on mute because it's just music in the background. Remember the young girl in Cardiff that got strangled and assaulted under a bridge, right? This is the video of her leaving the club, and you can just see how insidious it is right from the get-go. I dread to think how many times she may have been accosted by this guy before, right? How many times she, might have seen him trying to linger near her or whatever, or maybe it was just a case of he tried to make a move, was rejected, and then she tried to leave. But you can see here the nature of what is going on when he follows her out, and this is him following her. So for those of you listening, it's as soon as she leaves, the victim is obviously kept pixelated, but you can literally see the attacker comes out not long behind her, is always in eyesight of her, and is speed walking to catch up with her, never more than a few feet away. And obviously then he grabs her under a railway bridge, tries to, assault her, strangle her. Just again, never ever should have been in the country. Never ever should have been in the country. So again, you're seeing there how, sadly, how you got to keep your head on a swivel nowadays, no matter what, because depravity is at an all-time high, just in today's society anyway, because we've decided that's what we need to pride. That's what we need to pride, right? You can't have any kind of social stigma towards things anymore, because that would be deemed as insensitive or all manner of shaming or whatever. Maybe think that certain things were shamed for a reason. But this is a case of somebody who really had no business being in the country, like the male said. He's a quote-unquote Syrian asylum seeker. As far as I'm concerned, he should be back in his Islamic paradise, which he was supposedly fleeing, that Jolani is now established, because of the evil dictator Assad that was there before. That is seemingly, if the conventional wisdom was to be believed, who he was fleeing from. Why is he in Cardiff? Why is he not in Raqqa with his buddies? Either way, does not... Oh. You can tell my voice is going a little bit now with all the talking I've done. I ran out of drink a little while ago. He should not be in my capital city. They had no business being in my capital city. None of them do. None of them do. But sadly, it seems that Wales is losing its capital city, and it's also losing its secondary, well, you could call it secondary capital city as well, or one of them. in Swansea, which is, from what I can see, basically the Islamic, multicultural capital of the world. See, one of the things that Joe Marsh said in one of my interviews, and I can corroborate a lot of what he said, because there's one time I went down for an interview with somebody in the Swansea area, and what happened to be coming out past the school as the school was closing, as home time was coming. And you could be forgiven for thinking that it was a foreign school, as in, like, all of a sudden you've been transported to a foreign country. You could be forgiven for thinking that. Which is why I think the census in many ways in Wales is a lot worse, a lot less accurate than what it would be made out to be. It's hard to tell sometimes when you're in the rural areas, the valley areas of Wales, when you don't see these problems firsthand. It's difficult to guess, right? It's difficult to see. You only have to go on the data that you have, but I don't think it's the most accurate. I don't think it's the most accurate at all. So I thought you had somebody coming down the stairs. In Swansea, take a guess at the name, ladies and gentlemen. Swansea University student, my alma mater in this instance, has been jailed for 15 years for threatening a teenage girl. Swansea University student who raped a vulnerable teenage girl and later tried to intimidate her into dropping her complaint has been jailed for 15 years. I'm gonna bring his image up on screen. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to guess what his name is, and I'll tell you now. Have a guess what his name is, ladies and gentlemen. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I got good news. If you guessed Mohammed, ladies and gentlemen, you would be 100% correct. Good stuff. I think my microphone massively clipped over the limit there a good few times. I am sorry. Hopefully the audio will clear that up. The audio mixer will clear that up. Mohammed Rayhan, or Rayhan, however you say it, has been jailed for 15 years for assaulting a teenage girl. Swansea Crown Court heard that the 22-year-old Mohammed Rayhan of Phillips Parade in the city centre was a third-year software engineering student when he targeted the girl in summer of 2024. He groomed her before carrying out a series of assaults, including 2. When he told the victim, this is a real kicker, ladies and gentlemen, when he told the victim his actions were hurting her, when the victim told him, when the victim told him his actions were hurting her, he chillingly replied, "Good." Do you really still think, ladies and gentlemen, that everyone around the world thinks the same that we do? Everyone around the world sees the world the same that we do? How we're all just going to get around the fucking campfire and sing Kumbaya? Yeah? You still think that? I think it'd be hard for you to think that after today, but hey, so each person's wall takes a different amount of hammering, going head first, splattering your cranium into it before it eventually collapses. The abuse left the teenager traumatized. In a statement read to the court, she described how she no longer felt safe going out alone, constantly looked over her shoulder in fear of being followed, and panicked whenever a man came near. She felt like a different person from the girl she had been before encountering Rayhan. Yeah, no surprise. And he had no business being here. He had absolutely no business being here. I don't know if it says whether he came over as a foreign student or whatever, whether it was like a foreign exchange student or whatever, or he came over like a foreign scholarship, something like that. And he contacted her after she went to the police, made threats in an attempt to force her to withdraw it. It was good that she stood firm, later gave evidence in court, which was key to securing his conviction. So however he's here, after he has served his sentence, bare minimum, he should be sent back to whatever shithole his ancestry is from. That's where he should be sent back to. Sent back to whatever shithole his ancestry is from. He has no business being here once his sentence is done. Who knows, he might only end up serving 40% of it. Might be out this time in, 2031. You certainly hope not. But if they can potentially do it to Wayne, they can do it to anybody, can't they? I suppose we'll see. Just need to go check something a sec, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to make sure the fire was still lit. Was all. Just had to go quickly put a new log on there. Was all. Don't tell Ed Miliband he's taking that fucking log burner, multi-burner from me, from my cold dead fucking hands. Well, who's Wales's like net zero minister? Do we have like a net zero minister? They'll be taking that fucking burner from me, from my cold dead hands, let me tell you. Just keep thinking about, ladies and gentlemen, when they once, well, still civilized at the moment with regards to the populace, right? They once civilized, once understanding of themselves and their community's population, homogenous population in that way, in Wales, in Britain, right? I think about, do we have really anything to gain via, as we've seen, this weird multicultural diversity experiment in this only land that we have to call home, especially with many, many people in the world? I would argue not. They don't make a good case for themselves necessarily either. Because think about this now, with how many people who would be thinking like this, ladies and gentlemen, might be coming in through our stupid open borders, right? Apparently this is a call with Muslim Brotherhood leaders. Now, I don't know how they're doing this. Maybe they're on some like weird chat program that's specific to the Middle East or Asia or whatever. Maybe they're doing this through Zoom or whatever, weekly terrorist checking call where you do it with like maybe a business mentor or something like that. How are you doing on, sales of machetes, and how are you doing on your behead quota today, or this week rather? Muslims have been, openly talking about in this call how they plan to conquer America and Europe and destroy Western civilization. Doesn't sound very integrated to me. Doesn't sound very, kumbaya, let's all get sing around the fire and celebrate our differences and, enjoy the glorious diversity. Sounds that many people, and this was encapsulated in Bushra Sheikh's recent post on X. You can go find it. It won't be linked down below, but you can go find it. In celebration of the Mamdani election victory in New York, she was ecstatic, and she literally used the words, ladies and gentlemen, "A Muslim has taken New York City." These people, when it suits them, when they get a perceived victory, they put on they have this big Freudian slip, this big mask slip, right? The mask keeps slipping. It doesn't even stay on, right? They don't have a mask, but some of them, they tried to keep one on and the mask slipped, and they give away their war fighting ambitions. And they say things like, "We've taken the city. We've taken New York City." That indicates to you, ladies and gentlemen, you and me, that these people think that they are in a war. What do they call it? Jihad, struggle, implication, war. We would do well to remember that. We would do well to keep that at the forefront of our minds with pretty much every interaction at this point. We are in so much danger, we can't afford not to. And they are so seemingly fucking open about it, yet we still arrogantly think we know better not to listen. It's literally there for us.
700 years of our trial to conquer Europe by force failed. They did something wrong, very wrong. They tried for many years to conquer Europe through wars, only wars.
This is the soft Islamic conquest of the West. Basically, what the Islamic and again, I'm an Orthodox Muslim. what we couldn't do in the last, say, 20 years, now the West is doing it for us for free and even paying for it.
Allah permitted them to live off the infidel while they are subduing them. So it had sort of a parasitic type of attitude where they can live off of the host country, where their goal is to eventually eradicate the host culture and supplant it with Islam.
700 years.
How Islamophobic? That last guy at the end. Parasitic. How they feed off the host culture until they supplant it and take it over and destroy the host, whilst feeding on its resources the whole way. What they couldn't do for 700 years, we are doing for free. Can we, not us, right? Because I know you guys, for the most part, I'm preaching to the converted here. Can we as the government, but we as like overall society, not? Can we not be chickens for KFC? Can we not be turkeys for Christmas? And think about it. You have so many atrocities that have happened because of this. Unspeakable atrocities happen because of this. Yet somehow people still don't see it, and they spell it out for you. This is where tolerance gets you. This is where weakness gets you. This is where not having principles gets you. Because make no mistake, he said he was an Orthodox Muslim. Say what you want about them, about their principles, about their worldview, about all this stuff, right? They are deeply principled. That's one thing they are. And principled people will always win over those who have none. It's principles that give you direction. It's principles that light your path, right? Principles are general things that you adhere to, or guiding lights that you always have, that, they're not specific to a situation. You might have the principle of always being honest. And in this case, you might be confronted with a sticky situation. You're tempted to lie. But if you have one of the principles, you're always being honest. It's like a guiding light in a cloudy situation, in a mist, right? Of not knowing what to do, in a mist of ambiguity. Principles will guide you. Say what you want about these people. They are extremely principled. Their principle is to destroy us, destroy our nation, enslave us, right, if we won't convert, and get us to acknowledge our second-classedness whilst we are subdued and humiliated, belittled. That's what the jizya is. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen. You can go find 1 or 2 episodes ago. You can go find my X post where I screenshotted the exact things from friggin' Sunnah or Quran.com, whatever it was. I believe it's Sunnah 429, if I'm not mistaken, but I might have the exact citation wrong on that one. So don't quote me on the exact citation, unless I'm right, in which case I always meant it. I always knew it was that citation. But this is why, it's a kind of parasitic relationship, again, because as our nation, as our culture is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, theirs is getting stronger because they're feeding off us. And this is where Welsh man, Welsh woman, right? Welsh they thems, if you want to do that, right? Okay, this is the one time I'll entertain your bullshit if it means you're going to listen. You have to choose now, and please don't be like one of the silly, stupid females in New York making the perfect case for repealing the 19th by voting for exactly this. And not to mention all of the other weird trans stuff and outright communism. It's going to come down to us or them. That's a sad reality. It's a sad reality. It's going to come down to us or them. At least in regards to this one issue. religion is one of many factors that motivates people, right? Religion often gets to the most barest, elements of human nature, right? And human being. It's not just that. The gangs were also racially based, for example, operating on a system of racial hierarchy, in which case the girls were seen as, less than because of their race and because of where they come from. For all of the talk about anti-racism, you don't hear about it for any of the justice for the girls, do you? Despite the fact that these are some of the most racist people you'll ever meet. Even if they're very good at projecting a different exterior to you on the outside and perfectly in line with their takia practices. Takia, by the way, meaning they can lie to you to further political aim. That's literally one of their principles. One of their principles, ladies and gentlemen, is to lie to further political aim. But we have good reason to believe they're not lying here, ladies and gentlemen, because if they were lying, it would not be furthering their political aim. If anything, it would be giving us more impotence to go against it. It would actually be slowing their political aim, which is to expand the caliphate. So they're actually just being honest. That's how open and that's how confident they feel, which is a sign of our weakness. Maybe we should do something about that. Obviously, there's not really much any one person can do, obviously. But you need to remember this with your attitude on a day-to-day basis. But not only that, the next time we're at the ballot box, it might be your only opportunity. You need to start understanding how valuable certain things are now. Like the Second Amendment, you might be staunchly against guns, but you're not going to be staunchly against guns if there's an angry mob of Muslims at your door. Or if there's an angry mob of anybody at your door. You're not going to be so against guns then, are you? Right? If you're being attacked, if you're being followed, you're not going to be so against pepper spray or batons or guns then, are you? And if you are, then you're either just very sadly not exactly the sharpest tool in the box, or you've been just indoctrinated to a potentially insalvageable degree, to where you just have so little care about your self-preservation. But the thing is, you having so little care about your self-preservation when it comes to how you vote and everything like that, not only affects your self-preservation, it affects everybody else's as well. Is why the legislation where people were not allowed to own firearms or own weapons or anything like that anymore, people's decisions affected everybody. And that's why it's been such a catastrophic decision. Not hard to understand, ladies and gentlemen, about how, again, you remove any kind of deterrent, physical deterrent in the form of the boof boof, the bang bang, And then all of a sudden the government starts arresting you for social media posts and arresting you if you try to go and rescue your daughter from a gang. Funny how that works, isn't it? And then also saying how much of a bigot you are and you need to accept the colonization and your ethnic replacement and so on. How good it is for you. It's good for them because they see it as voters until the point where it's going to come and it's going to eat your politicians as well. So that's the best thing, ladies and gentlemen. The end game will be that we will get taken over by this parasitic culture and all other elements of parasitic cultures if we don't stand up for our own. But our weak, traitorous politicians will sell us down the river. Right, sell us down the river for their own political gain in the short term. After we are done, there's no recourse for us because we've been stabbed in the back by our representative with the power to change things. When it gets to a point then when these people will operate in their own sectarian interest and foreigners will operate in the interests of foreigners, make no mistake about it, the time will then come for them as well. But they think that it won't. But it will. Or at the very least, they'll have opportunity to get away. They'll flee somewhere else. They'll flee to a second home or a holiday home somewhere and live out the rest of their days in paradise, whilst what remains of us will be subjugated and enslaved and a hated minority, and many of us will sadly not be here anymore. Is that a future you want for your children and for your grandchildren? If not, it's on your duty to stand up now. Even if it is just in silently reinforcing these attitudes every single day. Really putting your mind to the grindstone and sharpening your mind. If you're one of these people that everything that I've said to you right now is if I'm reading the gospel to a demon, then listen to what I've said, see what you've seen, whatever else. but then really go away and think about it. As you do, don't just dismiss it. And if you still think I'm wrong, fair enough. All right, whatever. If you've had a good think about it, then, you know, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am wrong. I don't think I am. But at least go away and have a big, hard think about it. Think about it and stress test your ideas. Really question everything intently, with intent. Really, really hard about what you believe. And see if it stands up to scrutiny. It's not just about changing your mind. It's about sharpening your mind. Right? By subjecting what you believe. And I'm one of these people, I do this contemplating questions all the fucking time that I'm pretty much in a constant state of headache. Right? I'm exaggerating, obviously, but because I listen to podcasts so much, because not just podcasts, but like shows and stuff like that, a lot of political commentary shows, because I really spend a lot of time in this space, and I'm constantly asking myself questions, constantly trying to think through things. It's almost like I'm asking myself, repeat on multiple times a day, you know, all times a day. Why do I believe what I believe? What is true? What is true? Try and rationalize this. Try and make my way through that. Solve this problem. Right? It's hard. It's hard. But it is really, really important, ladies and gentlemen. It's because we have to keep fighting for truth. And you have to fight for it. It's not going to come easy. It's not going to come easy. Like us now digging ourselves back out of this hole physically that we've gotten ourselves into. It's not going to come easy. And this is a particular story I wanted to go over. I think this is the last main example that we've got before we move on to a different thing about the media, which is where you get your information from, which is why I appreciate you guys tuning in for all of this. This is going to be a very long episode, obviously. We've only just about crossed the halfway point of the actual stuff that I've got. So this is going to be a long episode. This one I wanted to cover in particular, I was nearly brought to tears when I read this story. Not even necessarily because of what happened. Because you'll find a link down below. I'm not going to show the images here. But the victim in this case looks exactly like my father. It's a spitting image of my father. That made everything so much more real for me. On an unreal degree. This is a man named Terry McFadden. And he was in his 70s and he was found dead in his home, I believe. His 4-bedroom detached house he shared with his church-going partner, retired mental health nurse Jenny Holmwood, who was 75. And they rent a room to a young lodger. It appears to be this young lodger that took his life. He was stabbed to death. He was stabbed to death in his home shortly after he had been given the all clear from cancer. Police were called to the house yesterday after paramedics attending a call to an individual with breathing problems reported a man being violent and aggressive, and the person that has been detained has now been arrested and I believe charged. It's a 22-year-old by the name, something to do with 22-year-olds today. Moses Fernandez of Norwich has been charged with murder, and it says British national. Moses Fernandez, not exactly a stereotypical British name, which is why I instantly put out a thing on X, seeing anybody would see it, but I only usually get about 5 views or whatever it is whenever I share something. Who is this Moses Fernandez guy? Does anybody know? Because the initial Daily Mail article did not have an image. The BBC one did, which begrudgingly I had to cite the BBC. I don't want to, for reasons I'll get onto in a moment. This is apparently, according to the BBC, Moses Fernandez, 22-year-old who slaughtered a 70-year-old, or, well, man in his 70s, right? You'll see here, right, judging by his name, which in many instances would relate back to different places. I actually asked Grok to do. I sent the link to the article to Grok, and it found the image, and based on his name, based on sort of where, you know, migration patterns, he sort of took that into account as well, and how the world landscape changed over the last sort of 60 or so years. I can't confirm this. He's remanded and due to appear at Norwich Crown Court, I believe, tomorrow, because he murdered McFadden. He's been charged with the murder of McFadden on the 3rd. They've identified him as a British national. And it would appear that he would descend, according to Grok, his most likely pointer, which I'll bring this up on screen for you now, would be someone of what would be termed Indian descent, specifically Goan or Indo-Portuguese. So we will see if Grok's tabulation is correct. He did also say that it could be like Portuguese or Brazilian heritage, but the UK's demographics makes Indian Portuguese more probable. But it is an educated guess at best. And again, it just seems how many, if this is the case, obviously, how many more? And as I said, this one struck me quite personally, not because I have any relation to Mr. McFadden in particular, it's because I saw this article and I honestly thought it was my dad at first. I honestly thought it was my dad. And made it very, very real for me. Like, all the more. Like, I saw that and I realized I could be reading about my dad in the papers right now. Thank God I'm not. But it puts me in the frame of mind of, like, the adoptive, adopted children of that liberal, social democrat German mayor, Iris Stolzer, who again was tortured. That's about my 5th or 6th voice break in this episode, I think. Who was tortured by her adoptive daughter and seemingly by her adoptive son as well, both of African descent, both of whom now the taxpayer are having to take care of, it seems. But they put her in the basement, they tortured her for hours, and she was very lucky to survive. What was this guy's deal? What was this guy's deal? Again, they said they rented the room to a young lodger, right, which seemingly was Moses Fernandez. I believe the BBC article mentions that he was staying at the same residence. I'm just trying to make sure and corroborate that before I say that definitively. Yeah, Moses Fernandez, 22, who lived at the same address, has been charged with murdering Mr. McFadden on 3rd of November. He just had the all clear from cancer. I don't really know what to say, to be honest. Like I said, I just can't get over the feeling, of reading that article for the first time, honestly looking down. I thought I saw my dad and that I was about to, when I saw the headline, obviously, and I was like, what the fuck? And thank God then that it wasn't. But you see things like that sometimes and it makes it a lot more real, And realize, holy shit, maybe we are in a fight for our very existence, and maybe the lines do have to be drawn on things that make us a bit uncomfortable. Speaking of real, speaking of uncomfortable, BBC have been made uncomfortable by the realities of some situations which if you get your information solely from like BBC, ITV, all of these other places, now you might want to question that. Because this is major news that broke recently. Major news that broke recently. I just realized my mic settings might be a little bit different in this recording now, because I had a setting on before, but then I had to reset the interface and now it's gone off. I didn't notice, it's all good. The BBC, I'm sure you would have seen this, Stephen Crowder's talked about it, all manner of pundits have talked about it, I think. Turns out they doctored one of Trump's, heavily doctored one of Trump's January 6th speeches by stitching together 2 points that were about an hour apart in his speech to make Trump say something that he didn't actually say. And this was exposed by The Telegraph. Corporation edited footage in Panorama program make it seem that President was encouraging Capitol riot, when in reality he was actually saying the opposite. The BBC has doctored a Donald Trump speech by making him appear to encourage the Capitol Hill riot, according to an internal whistleblowing memo seen by The Telegraph. A Panorama program broadcast a week before the US election completely misled viewers by showing the president telling supporters he was going to walk with them to the Capitol to fight like hell, when in fact he said he would walk with them to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Those two things could not be more different. Ladies and gentlemen, could they? Sadly, I still have people who I talk about on a daily basis. They still think that January 6th was an insurrection. They still think it was anything but a walking tour. Right, that FBI agents outright led people into committing a crime. Now, if I'm not mistaken, these FBI agents are not supposed to facilitate crime, but they did on that day. They facilitated criminal activity on that day for political reasons. The mangled footage was highlighted in a 19-page dossier on BBC Bias, which was compiled by a recent member of the Corporation Standards Committee, is now circulating in government departments. Here is that video for you, ladies and gentlemen, of, I've forgotten his name, the guy from The Telegraph itself, explaining how the clip of Donald Trump was doctored. This, no matter what you think of Trump, no matter what you think of the BBC, no matter what you think of The Telegraph, no matter what you think of anybody in particular, America, Britain, the relationship between the two, don't care really what you think of the two. This is the BBC, as we've seen time and time again with our own issues, outright lying, and this could have had serious consequences on the world stage had it altered the election outcome. Think about it. Would we have had the Gaza deal? Would we have had relative peace in Gaza coming up? Would we have had, the relative peace in Ukraine at the moment, which obviously is still, going on, but, would we have had a lot of the things that, President Trump is to be commended on, even if things haven't gone perfectly, Epstein files being the biggest black mark in his administration at the moment. But, in terms of what he's doing for the American people and for the world at large, there's a lot of things to be happy with, that if Kamala had got in, Jesus Christ, I dread to think where we would have been. And this is BBC trying to secure exactly that outcome by lying about Donald Trump.
They played the following clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell.
But Trump didn't, in fact, say this at all. The BBC spliced together 2 clips that took place 54 minutes apart. So let's go through it again.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
Oh, how interesting. The BBC lying? Well, I never. Well, I never. And it's kind of the thing that American media do all the time. They lie and say that Trump said that there was very fine people on both sides, referring to white supremacists and neo-Nazis and all of this, right? It's not something that he said. Again, there's people out there that will disagree with that position, right? There are outright Nazis, national socialists, and white supremacists out there. Even a whole new category of one that I didn't know about before, which is white totalitarianist, which is something I come across recently. I was watching a review that Joe Marsh and Mark Collette done on a BBC hit piece that were done on them. There was one guy in there called Blair Cottrell, I believe his name was, Australian guy. And his position, in my opinion, this is my opinion, was just something that seemed so absurd to me that I don't even necessarily think he believed it himself. But he literally, his white totalitarianist position was that the white race is the default human race and essentially no other races should exist, right? And that's what we should aim to aspire towards. It's just, completely, so far out there that I even wonder whether he was saying it because he knew the cameras were there and he knew that there was undercover journalists or whatever. I don't know. Or that he actually believes this, in which case, like, obviously I don't support that position whatsoever. He was even saying things like the only way to deal with like an African is you deal with them the same way that you deal with a dog. If you're firm with them, they respect you. Just no. No, I can't get behind that. I can't get behind that, But there are people like that out there. But they tried to obviously misrepresent Trump's position. It obviously wasn't true. So, like we were saying, ladies and gentlemen, as again with the BBC doctoring footage of Trump and so on, that's why you can't trust the legacy media. That's why alternative media is so important, which is why I appreciate everybody who tunes into this show. Thank you, everybody, as always. We're not done yet, by the way. This is not my outro or anything like that. Another thing, obviously, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, there is an email for this show. I think I said it at the start. Obviously, I'll say it again now. If you have anything you want to bring forward, if you want to bring a story forward, if you're a whistleblower or you want to blow the whistle on something, or you want to leave an anonymous tip or want to come on the show anonymously or something like that, whatever it is, if you have something you feel that is in the public interest to share, right, if you want to add extra context to some of the topics that we talk about, to, again, make sure everybody is as informed, as armed and dangerous as possible, then head over and put this into your toolbox on your email, all lowercase, votv.tips@proton.me, like me, votv.tips@proton.me. Look forward to hopefully receiving your emails about future stuff that we could talk about, or blowing the whistle, or whatever it may be. That's why whistleblowers are so important, ladies and gentlemen. Alternative media and whistleblowers, massively important, as you know, from the people that I have spoken to in the past, all manner of whistleblower, especially in the NHS, right? But now whistleblower has come forward. Obviously, the leak about Trump and the edited video from the BBC was obviously revealed by a whistleblower. Another thing that's terrifying that's been revealed by a whistleblower, ladies and gentlemen, the endless cascade of horror stories that we call the UK and Europe right now. Migrants are apparently being given asylum despite being accused of sexual offences. I think we might have covered this before, but this is now an article that's been published today, claimed by a whistleblower. A Home Office worker says she was disciplined for rejecting the case of an Afghan arrested for indecency. So we're literally, whenever you see these boats, ladies and gentlemen, which, again, if you look at this image and think back to the conversation I had with John Carr about actually no privileged Nepo babies, what do you notice? What do you notice? Massive mega boat with about 40 or fucking 50 people on it, all fighting age men. All fighting age military men, aside from maybe one, what appears to be a lady at the back. usually one single female or possibly another, possibly two. Migrants who have been accused of sex offences and other crimes are being granted asylum anyway, as claimed by a whistleblower. A senior caseworker has told The Telegraph that the Home Office staff can approve claims from asylum seekers charged with crimes as long as the offence for which they are being prosecuted does not merit a prison sentence of 12 months or more. She cited a case where she was disciplined after refusing to approve an Afghan man's application because he had been arrested several times for indecently exposing himself in a children's play area. So obviously Afghans that are exposing themselves to children in our children's play areas have no business being in our societies, in our country whatsoever. But now you have a Home Office worker that was reprimanded for not allowing said weirdo, to say the least, into our lovely communities. Still think the Home Office is anything but a foreign office, ladies and gentlemen, not to mention it's made up pretty much entirely of foreigners. The caseworker, whom we are not naming to protect her identity, decided to speak up because she believed migrants being allowed to remain in the UK when they should be deported. She alleged that caseworkers were under pressure to hit targets that incentivized them to improve more claims. A lot of scrutiny going on here, isn't there, Lammy? Seems like a lot of scrutiny is going on here. Or have you got a quota-based system of how many people you need to get in for your foreign army? No longer conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen. And that applications from some countries, such as Eritrea and Sudan, were fast-tracked with less scrutiny than those of other nations. Eritrea is the freaking second nation that we talked about in that graph of sexual crimes in London. It is the second nation. Second place at the top of sex crimes in London. Right after Afghanis. Literally bringing in, like, I mean to say this in any kind of inherently disparaging way, but there's no other way to put it, the absolute worst of the world, it seems. At least in these ways. Why? Why, when we know they're not genuine asylum seekers? They'll go into these hotels, they'll throw the food all over the floor, they'll assault the staff, they'll say how much they hate it, how much how much the food is shit and all of this other stuff, despite the fact that it's taxpayers that got extorted to pay for it for them. She even said when asylum seekers' applications were rejected by immigration tribunals, migrants could still make further submissions, often introducing new evidence such as psychiatric, sexual or religious claims, which delayed or prevented their deportation. Or they might just say that McDonald's don't do fucking chicken nuggets in the place that I'll be sent to, so I can't be deported because I might harm my quality of life. It's a carousel just going round and round and round, the whistleblower said. We're browbeaten. We feel like we're in an asylum. We feel browbeaten because we read in the press that we're rubbish. I mean, it's not wrong. The Home Office is rubbish. It's not us. It's the ones at the coal face are doing the best we possibly can. We're in a lose-lose situation. And that's where I do feel empathy with some of these people. Some of these people, like somebody who reached out to me, I won't say the exact position that they were in, right? I'm not going to say anything about the exact place where they worked, but they were one of the people that reached out to me a little while ago when I gave the tip about Pontypridd and a couple of other things, right, from several people. And the position that they're in, they feel absolutely helpless. This is one of the things that you have good people in these positions, but they feel absolutely helpless. Which is why, again, things like this, we need to turn the cultural tide as soon as possible to get these good people out of those positions. Absolutely. Cultural tide is turning. So stay, head down, keep working, ladies and gentlemen, even if you can't be like massively overt about it. But again, that's why I said about that email, if you want to bring something forward, or we can arrange, for example, like this person spoke to the Telegraph, keep everything anonymous. If there's things you want to break on the show, if you want to come on the show to talk about anything, if you need to bring things forward, right, then even if it's just your voice, or even if it's just things that you want me to relay, we can corroborate it, if we can ensure that, and obviously do the best that we can to ensure your anonymity, then we'll do that. And we appreciate you obviously reaching out, because it's a very courageous thing to do. Terrifying, ladies and gentlemen. Terrifying how deeply, deeply entrenched and turned against the British that the government are. Even now, where this is possibly one of the most shocking things that came out recently, the government is now, I believe it's the government, but school governors are being told to dismiss grooming gang concerns. That's what they're being told. As disinformation. They're being told to dismiss grooming gang concerns. Disgraceful question, quote-unquote disgraceful question, has been removed from safeguarding training after concerned parent raises the alarm. School governors have been encouraged to dismiss concerns about grooming gangs as disinformation. Thousands of governors are undergoing safeguarding training this year and were presented with a scenario involving rumours of men, quote-unquote, men belonging to a particular religion, unquote, committing, quote, violent crimes against women. They were asked to identify the scenario as part of an online safety risk, or as an online safety risk, because children were spreading disinformation. School governors are being told, and will be going along with, because we know that their spines are not strong enough to withstand this pressure. We saw that in the case of Bailey McLaren, right? Who had you noticed? Piers Morgan has been eerily silent on the group of feral foreign Muslim youths that were beating the shit out of a defenseless white boy recently, out of a defenseless white British boy recently, even go as far as, I believe, to whip him with belts, as some were claiming. The video is absolutely horrendous. Where's Piers Morgan calling them vermin, calling for severe retribution? You know? As he did with Bailey McLaren for pouring a water bottle over a not-so-defenseless Syrian refugee's head, right? Who's still in hiding, as far as I know, by the way, and his family are still in hiding. Obviously, that happened, I think, close to a decade ago, possibly even more, if I'm not mistaken. Come on, Piers. You're going to call them vermin? You're going to call for severe retribution? I suppose we'll see. But like the judge in that case, with Jamal basically calling all of the girls that were testifying that he, hit them with a hockey stick and so on, all of the testimonies saying that, all the undercover, recordings that were obtained, the judge just said that it was all lies and ruled in the refugees' favour. Have your children being concerned with very real things, very, very real things, being accused of lying. The government and the school boards, it seems, and the governors are taking the side of foreign over your children in your schools. If you need, ladies and gentlemen, because this is under the guise of diversity and protecting the narrative and not inflaming community tensions, if you needed any more evidence to get your children out of school, sadly, it seems you do have to take this responsibility back onto yourselves, mothers. If you don't want their heads filled with this garbage, then sadly it seems that responsibility is going to fall to you, the parents, the family. Make no mistake, this threat is very real. As we saw in Elgin, it seemingly does not even take a gang of people to be worried about this. And Rapuala Amadsi, Rape You All I'm Madsi, who did a horrific crime against a 14-year-old girl. Possibly the only Afghan in that region. Aside from some people telling me that there at one point potentially was a hotel in that area, but potentially, not just full of Afghans, could be full of other people from around the world as well, all different nationalities and so on. But it's all disinformation. You'll find the article link down below, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go check this out. I'm not lying to you. The training session, which MPs described as shocking and concerning, was delivered by Governor Hub, a management tool for school governors that is used in 2/3 of schools in England. Mandatory safeguarding training for school governors was recommended by an independent inquiry into child sexual abuse in 2022, amid concerns that evidence of grooming gangs and child sexual abuse was routinely ignored by schools and other institutions. Governors are required to receive safeguarding training and encouraged to take a refresh course each year. Critics of said the training scenario suggested that the threat from grooming gangs was being downplayed rather than addressed. And the article just goes on to say about, we know that the majority of gang perpetrators are of Pakistani origin. On the Governor Hub training quiz, something was removed, right? So the Governor Hub training quiz was removed after inquiries from the Telegraph. So what was said was, quote, at a board meeting, your staff governor reports overhearing pupils in her class talking about a video they were sent, falsely claiming that men belonging to a particular religion are using new tactics to commit violent crimes against women in your local area. Governors were told that pupils have sent the video to their friends because they think that it's true and they want help girls in their class stay safe. They were then asked. A Governor Hub spokesperson said the question was designed to test knowledge about online safety risks to students, but that the use of an example that alluded to grooming gangs was inappropriate. So you can't have... you can't have accurate examples here, can you? Can't have accurate real-world examples that would go against the narrative that they want to fill your children's head with, the shit that they want to fill your children's head with. But here's a little bit more info from Kevin O'Sullivan on Talk TV for this about this, ladies and gentlemen.
Has enraged the Tories. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, saying it is shocking that training for schools categorises what sounds like a description of a gang as disinformation or a conspiracy theory. Let's go straight over to the Chief Executive of Freedom from Abuse, a tireless campaigner against the sexual abuse of children, Marilyn Hawes. Marilyn, sorry, I apologise. We haven't got long on this because we've had a very busy night. But this is pretty shocking, isn't it? So
it's appalling.
The scenario is that governors have been told that if kids come up to you and go, oh, look, I've got this video, I've got evidence that the rape gangs are primarily Pakistani men, Muslim men of Pakistani heritage, they're to be told that's disinformation, ignore it, and this is an online safety risk. It's not disinformation, it's true.
And neither is a conspiracy theory. That's what they've also been told. Or is it disinformation, misinformation, or conspiracy theory? You know what? I would love to. I have been a governor. I have been a deputy head. I'm from education. I'm furious. I'm absolutely furious. I don't know whether these governors have actually taken on board the fact they actually have a vicarious legal duty of care to the staff, the parents.
Parents, you can't allow this. You can't allow this to stand. You have to push back against your governors. You have to push back against the school boards trying to downplay this, because it's England today, it's Wales tomorrow, right? That's how we need to see it. There's evidence, it seems, I've yet to see anything concrete come of it yet. But again, 3 constituencies in Wales, which again, look at Operation Stovewood. It's really one of the only examples you need to look at. Such a stark example, where about 3% of the population were responsible for nearly 2/3 of these heinous crimes. And now we have potentially instances of this being confirmed to have been covered up in 3 councils, or 3 constituencies in Wales: Monmouthshire, Pembrokeshire, and Swansea. Those are the 3 that I know were named in it because I read them out on that episode. It was a long time ago now. Like I said, guys, I'm not sure where exactly I left off there. There's been a lot of jump cuts today, as you can tell. I said it's England today, and many areas of Scotland as well. It's Wales tomorrow. We have a chance seemingly to be proactive about this, and it may offend your liberal sensibilities to maybe start looking at people in certain areas of the world and from different religions and so on, to be thinking about your own people first in this way, in a way that would offend your sensibilities. But your children's safety depends on it, unfortunately. And don't get me wrong, is obviously they could accost a British predator, a native British predator. Obviously, nobody's saying that. But in these people's minds, racial supremacy is certainly a factor. Religious supremacy, certainly a factor. Those are evident from the excerpts. And so, proactively, you simply ensure that your communities remain full of your people, not of foreigners. That's what it's going to come down to. And holding your school board accountable, not filling your children's heads with this diversity, disinformation nonsense. When we know it's not quote-unquote disinformation. These things have happened. They are still happening. And whilst they're allowed to operate, every single child in Britain is in danger. And that's how seriously we need to take it. Last couple of things now then, guys. Last couple of things now. This is the story I was looking for. If you need an example that these things are still going on, right? To this day, like I said, victims are being essentially forced to walk the streets with their, right? Not necessarily with them as in like on their arm or whatever, but walking the streets knowing that the person who, or the groups that them are still out there because they've never seen justice. They've never seen the back of a police van, you know, a shack wagon. They've never seen the inside of a cell for anything longer than maybe a few hours or a few days. Many of them still walk free in the communities where they terrorize these young girls. And only now, criminalization of the young girls themselves are being overturned. Only now. 19 men were arrested as part of a grooming gang in West Yorkshire. 19 men. The arrests come after 5 women alleged that they were trafficked and abused as children between 2000 and 2009. The inquiries remain ongoing, but these were in arrests were made last month at addresses in Kirklees, Calderdale, Bradford, and outside the force area, outside the West Yorkshire Police Force area. I don't believe they have been named yet. I don't believe the article has named them yet. But we shall see. We shall see. Detective Chief Inspector Rob Stevens, who is leading the investigation, described the alleged crime as abhorrent and heinous. He said safeguarding children and bringing to justice those involved in child sexual abuse remains a key focus for West Yorkshire Police. Time will tell on that one. And this large-scale inquiry demonstrates our ongoing commitment to investigating both current and non-recent sexual offences. All of those arrested have now been questioned and released pending further inquiries in what has been a lengthy and complex investigation. That says a lot, the fact that they were released, doesn't it? The fact that do thought criminals get the same release from their alleged crimes pending further investigation? No, of course not. But yet, as we've covered on the last episode as well, these child, and that goes the same, by the way, for the white kid that was recently hauled in front of a court and I believe convicted and was let go free, to get in the car and go home or whatever with his mum. Whilst I love how the lefties tried to say in that incident that the right wing were trying to get away from it or whatever because it wasn't a foreigner, it wasn't a brown person or whatever, despite the fact that you had many on all aspects of the right wing calling for this guy's death. It's unreal. Well, we'll see what happens with this, ladies and gentlemen. I could have the wrong read on this gang in particular. Who knows? I don't think I do. Because obviously, circle, circle, square, circle, circle, square. That's a pattern. We shall see. Last couple of things now, ladies and gentlemen, that I wanted to cap today. I'm speaking about, Gazans being allowed into the country in particular, and why it worries me is that now we have had somebody arrested in the UK over an alleged terror plot linked to Hamas. However, I'm a bit skeptical as to what this article says. I want to show you why I don't think things are on the up and up. This was on ITV News. It was published on November 4th, which was 2 days ago now, but because it's just crossed over into midnight, it's crossed over into the 6th of November now. A British man has been arrested and faces extradition to Germany, where he is accused of playing a key role in a Hamas-linked terror cell plotting attacks on Jewish targets. This is interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because as we know, the media will use the term British male or British man or British or English or Welsh, whatever, to refer to people who are not British, are not Welsh, are not English, as a means to misdirect, right? As a means to give you already a false narrative, the start of a false narrative. It'd be like calling Michael Adebolajo British because he was born here, right? Axel Rudicabana Welsh, right? Or British because he was born here even though he's African, right? All manner of things. So there's question mark number one. He's 39 years old, cannot be named for legal reasons. Obviously, it's question mark number two. But he was arrested Monday, appeared later that same day at Magistrates Court, Westminster. He's due to appear in court via video link next week, so I suppose that's when we'll learn more. But what is interesting about this, ladies and gentlemen, is these next two sentences, or these next two parts of the article. And I'll bring it up on screen for you now. Maybe you have more information about this than I do, because I'm only going off this ITV article. It says here, the Briton. The Briton is wanted by federal police in Germany as part of a major counter-terrorism operation, which last month led to the arrest of 3 men suspected of preparing acts of violence against Jewish targets in Germany on behalf of Hamas. Now, that term there, Britain, I'm going to highlight it. I know I've highlighted everything. I'm going to highlight it. It's an interesting term, ladies and gentlemen. It means British native or indigenous to the British Isles. Now, that would imply several things. imply that he would be of, say, either Celtic or Scottish or Anglo-Saxon descent. That's what it would imply. You don't just use a term like that. That's why they wouldn't use a term like that, for example, to describe Moses Fernandez. They wouldn't use a term like that to describe Anthony Williams, most likely. They wouldn't use a term like that to describe, any of the British nationals or British-born people, right? Because that implies a specific type of person. Which is interesting, because the next line says, ITV News has been told that the British suspect is the son of a senior Hamas official. Now, last I checked, there wouldn't be that many. Presumably, if he's of native British descent, his parents would have to be of native British descent as well. Presumably. Yet I'm not aware of any real native British descent people who were senior Hamas officials. Could be wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know. I'm doing a lot of speculation here because this is very interesting, especially when you look, seemingly, at who this person's compatriots were. The militant group, presumably Hamas, has previously denied links to the three men and called the allegations unfounded. Who are these three men? The men were identified only as German citizens, but here's what their names are. Abed Al-G, Ahmad I, and Lebanese-born Whale FM. Obviously, they keep them like that in line with privacy laws. So we have three men this person is linked to, obviously of foreign descent, one of them being Lebanese-born, the other one's just saying two German citizens, but quite clearly having like Southern Asian, Middle Asian, or Middle Eastern surnames or names that he's linked to. He's the son of a Hamas official, allegedly, senior Hamas official, who are obviously a group based in the Middle East, made up of, what we would call Palestinians. People say they're Semitic people, or you could say they're Palestinian Arabs, as some people say. But yet the son of that senior Hamas official, linked to these three people, is someone allegedly of indigenous British descent. Something's not adding up here for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just speculating. I know that's illegal nowadays. But the thing I put up on X was basically saying, I don't think this guy's name is going to be something like Geraint or Gareth or John or something like that, right? I just got a feeling that either this could be the case of somebody is named somebody who is of native British descent, some kind of Arab or Middle Eastern or Southern Asian name, whatever it may be, right? But I have questions how he would be the son of a senior Hamas official and be a person of native British descent, i.e. of Celtic heritage or of Anglo-Saxon heritage or, Scottish heritage. Or the media have used that term dishonestly to try and link an indigenous Brit to this group, to try and obfuscate away from who it actually is. Something's not adding up here. Something isn't adding up. I don't necessarily think I'm smart enough to figure it out, or I might be making a mountain out of a molehill. I might be making a mountain out of a molehill. If I am, let me know. But for it to be a person of Indigenous British descent, to be the son of a senior Hamas official, a terror group in the Middle East, whose population and terror officials are made up of Arabs, Muslim Arabs for the most part, and you know, Semitic people. He is involved in a cell with three other men, all with distinctly foreign names coming from like Arabia or potentially the Middle East. But yeah, in theory, if he's of indigenous descent and of indigenous heritage, I don't see how he could be the son of a senior Hamas official. I don't know. Or either he's not of native British descent, in which case the media has used the term Briton improperly to falsely implicate a British person, a genuine British person, true British person. Who knows? I thought it was interesting to point out. Leave your comments down below. Let me know if you've made it this far. 2.5 hours in. Well done. Or maybe you use the chapters down below. In which case, I don't mind. That's what they're there for. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think, ladies and gentlemen. I think there's something deeply concerning about this, but I suppose we'll wait to find out more. Last thing, and I left this to last, ladies and gentlemen, deliberately. So I always found that sometimes when I'm watching certain shows or whatever, that sometimes I skip to the end because they keep quite interesting stuff at the end. I think you say that this is possibly a dagger in the heart of Plaid Cymru in many ways. Because one thing that was quite interesting was somebody got sent down recently in a Plaid Cymru council, where there was more than 50 missed opportunities to stop a head teacher. Now, as I mentioned, the BBC can't necessarily be, trusted a lot of the time, but it's the only place where I can find an article actually talking about this at the moment. It's been revealed that a head teacher of a school in Kingo Gwynedd, which is a Plaid Cymru council. I might have to tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't believe this article is going to tell you. More than 50 missed opportunities to intervene to stop a school head teacher who was able to abuse young girls for years. A child practice review led by prominent expert Jan Pickles has looked into the crimes of a 68-year-old Neil Foden of Conwy County in North Wales. He was just jailed for 17 years, convicted of 19 charges involving 4 girls. He was a prolific sex offender who harmed many children. The leader of Kingo Gwynedd Council said the authority took responsibility for the mistakes and missed opportunities. Really, though? Is it just going to be another case of lessons learned? Apologize to those who have suffered. I'm sure I'm sure that's just going to be enough. Just say sorry. Oh, sorry, we fucked up, and, you ended up getting down for 19 counts of horrific sex crimes against you, but we're sorry. A total of 52 concerns about safeguarding and other issues were found to have been raised and not acted on by Gwynedd Council. and other agencies as early as 2018, continuing until his arrest in 2023. Seems that we did not learn our lesson from Ian Watkins, ladies and gentlemen, or the lessons weren't learned from Avril and Peter Griffiths. And now you have 50, over 50, missed opportunities to catch a horrific predator. You think Plaid Cymru is going to keep the people of Wales safe? They can't even act on 50, greater than 50 opportunities, knowing opportunities to stop one child predator? At best, it's incompetence. At worst, it's evil, incomprehensible. Either way, neither made them fit to govern. The ambitious recommendations in the report that the report makes are designed to bring about the most significant changes in safeguarding in schools in Wales in a generation. I suppose we will see, won't we? I suppose we will see. There was repeated warnings in this highly critical 108-page report said he was a powerful figure within the education community who also had a wide-ranging reputation as a bully and also used excessive force on boys. Repeated warnings about Foden, who it describes as opportunistic and determined, were either ignored or inadequately addressed. He was arrested in September 2023 after one of his victims showed an adult a photo of themselves with Foden and sexually screenshots of explicit text messages. So a little bit of information for you, ladies and gentlemen. There's a little bit of a timeline here. He becomes a headmaster on April Fool's Day. How funny is not funny, but how again, the universe works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? April Fool's Day, he becomes a headmaster, 1997. 2010, he accesses material involving young girls and urination, a fetish he would later inflict on some of his victims. That was from 2010 to 2012. He was grooming young girls from 2017 to 2023. Child known as Joe was groomed by Foden, who was also the safeguarding officer. In 2017, there was employment tribunals. 2 ex-teachers win their employment tribunals. Foden was revealed as vindictive, but school failed to take action. Then we have child E, 2019 to 2012. She was groomed by Foden. 12th of April, council fails to investigate Foden's closeness to teenage girls. Many complaints coming in May to June of 2019. Independent Complaints Committee report says that the school is overly dependent on the opinion of Foden. Summer and autumn 2019, there were more concerns. Yeah, more concerns. I'm trying to get this. There we go. A second safeguarding concern about Foden was raised by Anglesey Council. The information is passed on to Gwynedd, but it makes no formal investigation. February the 5th of 2020. Foden abuses child E in his hotel room the night before speaking at the Children, Young People and Education Committee at the Senedd. Foden was reprimanded for bullying September to October of 2020. He becomes strategic head of Ysgol Dyffryn Nantell. I don't know how to say it. Nantell, I think that's how you say it. There's not even a vowel between the T and the 2 L's, so I've got no chance with that one. In June of 2021, September of 2021, Mother Dawn Roberts says Foden was filmed assaulting her 11-year-old son by holding him down forcefully and kneeling over his head. He was not suspended. Failed to suspend him. Council failed to suspend him over the restraining order. And another restraining order over another child, and he works from home for a short time. In February of 2022, footage showed Foden grabbing pupil at Ysgol Dyffryn. He leaves his role in August. In 2023, he grooms and abuses somebody known as Child A. In March of 2023, teachers email Foden telling him his closeness to Child A was unwise. There was an Eston inspection in June of 2023, praised the council's generally sound education and safeguarding arrangements. July 2023, social worker, we know how complicit they are in many instances of these grooming instances with the Islamic wedding ceremony that one poor girl was subjected to. Social worker of child B meets school over victim's excessive frequency in Foden's office. 6th of September then, Foden was arrested. Stands trial, April of 24. The verdict comes 15th of May. He's found guilty. And then we have documentaries, we have child review practice, and the report was eventually released 2 days ago. Started, mind you, all the way back. We go all the way through this timeline. Started back in, well, the fetish started in 2010. And the first instance of it happening in 2017. So 4 years completely ignored, under the radar. Free to do whatever you want. Countless, how many, unspeakable. I mean, children were allowed to suffer in this way, obviously. It's good to see, at least, that Plaid, in this instance, were getting slammed on the Senedd floor about this. Seemed. We have it here. I'm not sure who this person is who's actually speaking. I'll just see if the guys who posted this said anything about who it is. Here we go. It's a person by the name of Askar, represented by the name of Askar. She also highlighted the shocking behaviour of the council's former Plaid Cymru leader, Dyfrig Shenson, who refused to apologise to sex abuse victims and disgracefully tried to hang on to his position. But let's finish off this episode, that's now nearly 3 hours long, by watching Plaid Cymru get a little thorough drumming, shall we? And their failures to act on... How many was it again, ladies and gentlemen? 52. 52 opportunities to stop people. One of their councils, a head teacher, and we're unsuccessful, to put it mildly.
In fact, there were more than 50 missed opportunities to act to stop Foden from abusing children. Concerns were previously raised with the Plaid Cymru controlled Gwynedd Council about Foden meeting teenagers alone, but the local authority decided not to formally investigate. I have serious questions over the Plaid Cymru Council role in this. The local authorities' leader disgracefully refused to apologise to the predator's victims. He reluctantly tried to cling on to his position, but thankfully he eventually stepped down after some of his other council colleagues resigned in the wake of the refusal to apologise. Cabinet Secretary, I appreciate you cannot comment on the ongoings inside Plaid Cymru, but do you agree with me that these actions need further scrutiny? For example, how on earth was Foden allowed to remain in the employment of Gwynedd Council right up until his trial started? started. The report listed a series of failures on the local authorities' part, and they include failing to follow statutory safeguarding procedures, not informing the school of key safeguarding outcomes, dismissing concerns and discouraging reporting, not interviewing the child or parents following serious referrals, failing to escalate matters, failure to act to clearly inappropriate behaviour, failure to contact the police or safeguard a child during a critical incident, and systematic failure to challenge the head teacher's behaviour. This is damning, Cabinet Secretary.
Started trying to count that midway through. It just seemed like it was like failure, 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 failure. So it's not a song that does, doesn't it? Dun, 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 dun. God, you can tell it's early in the morning as I'm recording this now. Do you trust Plaid Cymru? If a Plaid Cymru Council, which obviously you see no mention of that, I believe, in the BBC article, if a Plaid Cymru Council could not handle this, do you really think that they could handle government? Honestly. Especially when how many concerns were raised, over 50. If they seemingly cannot be trusted with this one incident, and at the other incident, it seemed that the guy that they were on about before, when he was unapologetic to victims, just seemed like, again, not to give a shit about the victims of some of those heinous crimes. Do you really think they're fit to govern? Maybe you should have a think about that next time you see that you want to, be careful with immigration, that you're a voter that really cares about immigration and the way that the country is changing. Remember, demography is destiny. And you're thinking of voting Plaid Cymru for that. And then you're also thinking about that they can be trusted with level of government on a national scale. At least at this present moment in time, I would respectfully urge you against that. And if you've made it this far, then somehow you must really like what I have to say. Fair play. Longest episode to date. Absolutely. Just talking for 3 hours into a microphone. God damn. You guys seriously must have nothing better to do. Anyway, remember the 6th of November. The gunpowder treason and plot. I see no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. And I'll certainly not forget being transported to freaking Baghdad or Fallujah or many other places during the attempted recording sessions of this episode. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you found it useful. Can't imagine you found it enjoyable when you're here for nearly 3 hours. But nonetheless, hope it gave you some things to share, as you feel free to post the clips and so on. Share it around. Make sure people get this information out there, and always let them know that the sources will be freely available down below in the description on Spotify. It'll be available in the description on Rumble. Will it be available on the description on YouTube? So if they're ever wondering, again, if you, for example, post one of the clips or whatever on your own social media, one of your peers asks you about it, where's this information? Send them the link to the episodes on one of the platforms, and they can get the full list of references that I've used for this episode today, for clips, for articles, so on, down in the description. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are watching or listening to this from. Thank you for tuning in to Voice of the Valleys. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. Make sure notifications are turned on. Make sure you follow me on Rumble, on Spotify, on Amazon Music, and all of the other places as well. Make sure that there was something else. If you want to be on the show, if you want to reach out in some way to bring something forward, more information forward that you feel be useful for people to know, then get in touch on the email. Let's corroborate your information. Maybe let's get you in, to sit down, whether it's anonymously or whether it's openly, overtly. It's entirely up to you. votv.tips at proton.me. That is votv.tips, all lowercase, at protein. Said I'm hungry. At proton.me. One more time, just for luck. votv.tips at proton, PROTON.me. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You take care. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Hwyl fawr. We'll see you next time. And you take very good care of yourself now. Godspeed.